By The Way to My Heart Incorporated.
Welcome to the Heart of Innovation. 60 minutes that could save life and limb, with new breakthrough ideas and innovation changing the healthcare landscape. Brought to you by patient advocacy group thewaytomyheart.org in partnership with Abbott. Here are your hosts for the Heart of Innovation, Emmy Award-winning journalist and founder of The Way to My Heart, Kim McNicholas, and interventional cardiologist and founder of the Save My Piggies Health Education Series, Dr. John Phillips.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. We have a very concerning epidemic that is going global, and it's called diabetes. I'm sure you've heard this before, but did you know that more than 50% of American adults alone have at least pre-diabetes or diabetes? And even more concerning is a study that came out recently in Science Direct, a journal, suggested that there are more patients that are younger, between the ages of 18 and 24, that are actually getting amputated for an advanced form of critical limb ischemia. It is actually called critical limb ischemia. It's an advanced form of PAD, which is blocked arteries in the legs, and it's a complication of diabetes. Too many extra sugar molecules sitting there in the bloodstream scratches the arteries, leads to atherosclerosis. It is a huge problem. And so it used to be an old person's disease. Being peripheral artery disease is now getting younger and younger, and it's all because of diabetes. And so in this show, we are dedicating the entire hour to talking about potential advances in care for diabetes to hopefully put a stop to this epidemic. We have Dr. David Alper there. He is a board member for the Global PAD Association. We also have Salih Hendricks. He is a patient advocate or global patient advocate for the Global PAD Association. They're both going to be live in Orlando, Florida, where the American Diabetes Association is holding its annual scientific sessions. And we're going to get to them in just a moment. But first, we are going to welcome back Dr. John Phillips, straight from Maui, getting a little bit of sunshine, taking a break from saving those piggies. Are you feeling pretty rested?
Honestly, no. And I'll tell you why. I've never, I was thinking about this as I'm in Columbus. So we flew to Maui, which is 6 hours behind me Eastern time. And I'm thinking, how much further behind can I get? Because I'm so used to going ahead. And at any rate, the international date line's not too further west there on the Pacific. But I think 6 hours, maybe, I don't know if you can go 7 hours, but at any rate, that's about
I don't know.
behind.
Australia, maybe South Africa. We'll have to talk to Salih Hendricks
That's
about that.
When I came back from South Africa 2 years ago, we were 9.5 hours ahead, I think. At any rate, I get back last week on Sunday and I felt okay, but I have not. Last night was the first decent, nice sleep I've had, listen to me complain, right? But at any rate, we had a really nice time. Maui, I don't know if you've ever been there. Wonderful, beautiful area. We stayed in Lahaina, which is where the fires were, which is really devastating to see the loss of homes and cars and 100 and some odd lives. It's just really, really sad, but beautiful place. Did a lot of fun stuff. And
I heard they're really doing a great job rebuilding. They're really coming back. They're showing their resilience.
Yeah, they certainly are. What little I know about it, I believe they're having some issues with funding. A lot of the homes that burned, as I understand it, were fairly low income housing. And I think there is a little bit of a concern about outside developers maybe coming in and changing that kind of portfolio, so to speak. But I didn't realize their harbor burned too. So they lost all these boats. It's crazy what happened there. And if I also remember correctly, I think it was one of the largest number of deaths in a wildfire in the U.S. in a really long time. So certainly they need our support.
And even worse is they have a very high diabetic rate there as well across the islands. And that is very concerning, especially with now them having even greater shortages, of food and having to depend more on their famous spam, things in a can, things that are processed in order to thrive and survive. And don't tell me you had a spam sushi there, did you? Did you go to the local,
I did.
What was it, the dollar shop? I forget what they're called there. They're little AM
AB,
PM style things.
yeah, the
ABC stores.
ABC stores.
Yes.
Yep, yep.
You didn't. Did you
We
have
did.
a spam in one of those little
Yeah. Right. It's like
heated
I did.
containers?
I had to try it.
You did.
Well, so the spam came about because of World War II when they had all these
Right.
guys in the Pacific and they didn't know how to like maintain protein meals without
Yeah.
them. There's no refrigeration. So I don't know.
Nope.
Evidently, it's not bad, but I don't know that I'd buy it regularly.
No, but when you're depending on it, it becomes just part of the culture there. And that's what I'm hearing from doctors there. Thank goodness we do have, I call him, it's Dr. Ammer. He has a cath lab that's over on the main island. And he's now, because of the diabetes epidemic across the islands and the newly, just emergence of advanced cases of blocked arteries in the legs. He's now expanding across all of the islands to provide more advanced care. And as you know, with people who are diabetic, they usually get these blocked arteries in those smaller vessels below the knee and into the foot, which are much tougher to get. And you have to have a lot of finesse, a truly advanced skill set, such as what you have, Dr. Phillips. And he has as well, and he's developing a team over there to be able to provide this advanced care for those smaller vessels that are in the calf and in the foot that are really tough to get to, that diabetics truly experience.
Yeah, it's of course, get thrown right back into the fire. And it did. This is an interesting thing that happened to me. It hasn't happened in a while, but there was a gentleman that who was either staring down a below the knee amputation. He wasn't a candidate for bypass, so we ended up reconstructing a bunch of vessels below the knee. And there's complications that can ensue, but the arteries were so calcified and like basically turned to bone. We had a little hole in the artery, and that caused the pressure in the compartments in the legs to swell. So he had to go to surgery. I think we're going to be able to save his leg, but it's just one of these things that these folks are so sick and they're teetering on, the verge of complete like metabolic and physical collapse, that they do not have. Their runway is very short. And the diabetes, poor gentleman, I think really controlled diabetic. It's just, I'm glad we're having this conversation. We've talked about diabetes before, but I can't wait to hear what the team in Orlando has in store for us with respect to what's going on down there with the ADA national meeting.
So I think I'd like to jump to it. So I think we should go to break a little bit early, and let's come back and bring in Dr. David Alper and our patient advocate, global patient advocate, Salih Hendricks, who are live at the American Diabetes Association's scientific sessions. And we're going to hear what's new and what's next coming up right here on KDOW. So stay with us.
Leg health can indicate risk for heart attack.
Wow. That was great. Great timing on everything too. Okay.
I don't know,
Thank
spam
you,
and
Josh.
diabetes, not a good combination.
Yeah, no.
It's actually
John,
not that bad.
It doesn't taste that bad. It's kind of salty, isn't it?
Yep, very salty.
So-
What part of the pig is the spam? So,
I think it's
It
cold pork and then an amalgamation of probably some processed things. The other thing we should probably, I don't know if if I'm assuming they're talking about diet there as well, but I just read an article in the Wall Street Journal about the over processed, like bread, for example. They're making bread that can last several months because it's so over processed. And that really concerns me, as opposed to
So-
bread, which should only last 2 days. This stuff lasts several months.
So here's a fun fact for you and your listeners. Back in the 1700s, when somebody died and got buried, it took roughly 6 months for a body to decompose. It now takes over 4 years because we've so processed ourselves. Because
I
when
think
we
it's
eat,
the Twinkies.
well, Twinkies certainly don't help. When we eat preservatives, they stay within us and we're a hunk of meat and it preserves us. So you eat that bread,
Wow.
you'll last forever. They could prop you up in the living room.
I actually have a Twinkie in my office.
It's a scary thought.
I have a Twinkie in my office from 2016 that
Oh, no.
is mummified.
All right, everybody, 15 we're live.
On that note, hey, John, you want to take us back with your moment of inspiration, and then we'll key into the combo. Okay.
Live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let's run.
AM 1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Before we jump into what is going to be a very stimulating conversation about the epidemic of diabetes, Kim, I think we have a chance for a little bit of a moment of inspiration. Is that okay?
Always.
Dr. John
Yes, we do.
Phillips, spectacular, vascular moment of inspiration.
I've missed that.
Me too. I have missed that as well. So I thought to myself, okay, I just got back from Maui. Who lives in Maui that has, or at least calls Maui a second home? A lot of people, Oprah and Jeff Bezos, but Clint Eastwood has a house in Maui. And so I was like, oh, let's get some interesting Clint Eastwood quotes, Dirty Harry, all that good stuff. But I kind of like this one because I think the purpose to some degree of the this meeting is to enact change, and sometimes the change has to come from within. So Clint Eastwood is quoted as saying, sometimes if you want to see a change for the better, you have to take things into your own hands. So there you go.
Oh, I think that is completely. And I see, Dr. David Alper, we're going to bring you in right away. And I see Salih Hendricks live from the American Diabetes Association's annual scientific sessions, and they're nodding. I think that they 100% agree. Don't you, David Alper?
Well, I mean, change is exactly what's underneath any type of care with diabetes. Obviously it's a lifestyle affecting disease. People lead themselves up to it. Nobody asks for diabetes, of course. Very often it's inherited, but it's the result of a lifestyle. And so we can throw pills at it, we can throw tests at it, we can throw equipment at it. And if you're going to still sit down and plow through a box of Twinkies one night, you're going to have diabetic problems, and you're going to be led to things like CLI, PAD, amputation, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. It really goes to that quote that he's talking about, that there's so much that people can do on their own. I mean, unless you have type 1 diabetes, that's a little bit harder to get a handle on. There's so much that you have to do to be reliant upon medication and managing that medication. And especially for low income people, I just met someone last night that was saying with his insurance, he's really struggling with getting his diabetes under control and getting the right insulin for his body and his presentation of disease. And so as much as you want to say, yes, there is a lot you can do that is within your control, especially when it comes to food and exercise. But, medication is becoming a little bit more of a struggle. And I think that that's something that I see Salih Hendricks nodding his head, especially you came into this meeting from South Africa, and that is probably something that you were trying to address there at the meeting with some powers that be, I would imagine.
Yeah, no, definitely. It is something that I can actually come in here, okay, and even speaking to Dr. Alper just a few minutes ago, questions which I had buried in my mind for years was actually answered in less than 15 minutes.
Wow.
For me, I'm satisfied. The other thing is about the sessions which I've actually gone to so far. The topic in every session, AI. And for me, there is new developments, but how can AI take over in data collection? It could. But the thing is, there was an app which, for the screening of diabetes. So it is scientific, but for me as a diabetic for 42 years, I'm sitting next to Dr. Alper here, and John is on the other side there. But how can AI take things forward for data collection? Yes, but there was 2 sessions which I don't think any lived experience was actually impressed about. On AI taking over screening, diagnosis and things because of data collection. So it's impressive, but for me, as a lived experience, and all of us in that session, we had so many questions, but they had answers. And it was more of a marketing strategy in a way of that if I want to be tested, I want Dr. Alper or John on the other side to check me out, not to actually look at that. That's going to detect what type of screening you need, or if you're diabetic, your sugars are high and things. I want a doctor tell me, not an app. I mean,
Right.
I don't know, I don't know what John has in mind, but for me, I want my doctor.
Well, I'll just comment on that. And I think AI, I don't know a ton about AI. I mean, obviously, sometimes we use ChatGPT to form an email or something for us, but clearly there are very powerful kind of forces there that can change how we, diagnose and screen and treat people. But at the end of the day, and I always disclaimer, this is my opinion. At the end of the day, so people who don't have type 1 diabetes, right? So type 1 diabetes, they just don't make insulin. That's not their fault. But those people that are pre-diabetic, I think a third of all folks in the United States are pre-diabetic, meaning they have a sugar in their blood sugar levels are at that point where they're going to develop diabetes if they don't change their ways. We have to change our ways. We have to change how we eat. And we kind of off air, we're talking about all the processed foods that we eat with the added sugars. We have to change how we eat, and we have to exercise. And you have to be proactive. We are too reactive in how we treat patients. I see it every day. I'm reactive with someone's having a heart attack or blocked leg artery. We have to be proactive. And I hope what's going on down there in Florida, at least there's some thoughts of let's be proactive, but the patient has to buy into making change. Like we talked about in that quote, it rests on the patient's shoulders, in my opinion.
Well, you're 100% correct, John. And
Whoops, we might have had a little bit of a
little glitchy there.
Delay and technology there. And it's just when we have that amazing insight from Dr. David Alper. It's like, oh no, we're frozen, we're gone. But I'm sure they'll be back in a moment. And I just want to say, in terms of AI, I think that AI is just being thrown around as a marketing ploy. And I'm concerned. I think it will benefit so many patients and increase the number of patients getting diagnosed, because I think it is the diagnosis. I think that is something that can be streamlined through AI and getting people just moving through. Great. And also to detect who might be at risk and to get them in and to encourage them to go. Everything can be automated. But I think that there's still a lot to be said for when you're sick or when you're not feeling good or when you have something going on. You don't want technology to be interacting with you. We see it still all the time, when it comes to the portals that now patients have access to when they get their test results before they see the doctor. You and I have talked about this before. How many times have you had a patient sit there and tell you that, what, I got my test results 2 weeks ago. I couldn't get in for a consult with you to discuss the results till 2 weeks later, till today. And I have literally not had a good night's sleep because I Dr. Googled it. And with Dr. Google, with AI, those technologies are only as good as what's being fed into them. So a lot of the information is no different than what people are getting already. Yeah. And so I don't think I think it could lead to even greater fear going forward without the human touch.
I mean, we've got about a minute left before we go to break, and clearly we'll touch on or continue this conversation. But I had a lovely patient of mine yesterday, and she, I think probably I'm guessing about maybe 10% of people are kind of those that are in their chart reading their CAT scan reports and all these things, and it's in a language that they don't speak, and then that kind of triggers. And so maybe I don't know, maybe AI, and we're getting off topic a little bit, but can help decipher some of these words that they're hearing. But at the end of the day, the patient and the physician need to interact. The patient is the coach. patient and physician's the coach, patient's the quarterback or whatever, and the patient has to enact the change. We can help them as much as possible, but they have to move that boulder up the hill.
Yeah.
We are telling patients they need to own their disease is what
Yep.
it comes down to. And the minute that they do, then we have a partner, and then we can beat this thing together. It's just as simple as that, unless we're going to move in and live with them 24/7.
And that's where I do think that AI, can really help. And they can help to decipher things, but they can't diagnose. I don't ever want to see AI diagnosing, because especially when it comes to peripheral artery disease, it's not just the test results, it's also the presentation of symptoms and the entire lived experience that Salih was talking about. We're going to have more. I hear the music ending. We got to go to break. We'll have more with Dr. David Alper and Salih Hendricks live from the American Diabetes Association scientific session. So stay with us. That's next.
We good?
Yeah, I don't know why you lost us. Sorry about
We are
that.
good. I think we lost Colin for a second. He said, go ahead. Okay.
Maybe the gerbil died. I don't. I will tell you, John, in the ways that you want to lead the conversation. So Salih is attending more of the lectures. I'm attending more of the meetings because I'm more in the hierarchy. The biggest focuses they're talking about here is ADA is now going to be addressing obesity a lot more as part of lifestyle changes to deal with these. Especially, they are.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
They're actually forming a whole separate committee purely on obesity. So that's going to be a focus. And the other thing is, as I said earlier, is we're upticking the ancillary care. We're getting the diabetic nurse educators in there. We're getting the NPs and PAs in there that really have the patient FaceTime. So if the doctor relies on AI, and I'm not disagreeing with Kim, but even if you're relying on AI for your test results, you still need the one-on-one to talk about a just and unique lifestyle. And that's being recognized by bringing the nurse educators, et cetera, in and upticking. So those are the two things I'm hearing so far.
I'd also be interested to, when we go back into break, Salih, if you could, in 30 seconds, just kind of share with our viewers what your background is and why you flew. I find it amazing that you flew from South Africa to Orlando. And it was specifically for this, or were you coming to the U.S. anyway?
Yeah, no, it's specific for the ADA meeting. And it was actually supposed to be an invite for last year, because I met Dr. Gabby, the chief scientist, at a conference in Lisbon, and he invited me over.
Okay.
Because
are you attending? I've never been to that Congress, but are you attending more of kind of the non-clinically related sessions?
No. There is no such thing.
No,
this is all clinical.
Yeah,
this is all clinical. Okay.
I'm attending meetings that are administrative to some extent because this is when we get together. But John, there's over 10,000 people attending.
No, right. I imagine there's a ton of people.
Yeah,
there.
There's a lot.
You really can't even imagine the size of this thing.
And we are actually all scientific.
Every scientific level. That's right.
Okay.
The vendor hall has over 200 vendors.
And so, Salih, did you have a chance to speak? Were you invited to present, or were you just invited to attend?
No. I was invited to attend to actually gain knowledge on.
All right, 10 seconds and we're live.
Okay, John, you want to bring us back? Because once we lost them, and let's get into the heart of what
live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. What I'd like to do, with your blessing, Kim, is get right back to Salih and David. They're at the American Diabetes Association meeting, over 10,000 people in Orlando.
Yep.
Salih, you traveled all the way from South Africa to come to this meeting. What are, if you can, let's say 3 things that you have listened to or
poster presentation, whatever that you've seen that you're gonna bring back to South Africa that will expand your knowledge? You've been diabetic for 42 years. What are you gonna take away from this meeting?
From this meeting, it's hard to say this, but coming from South Africa and learning in 2 to 3 days the amount of improvement in technology in diabetes, and going back to South Africa and actually putting the advocacy world of questions at ease on what is being developed, what is accessible to us, and what is accessible here in the USA and Europe.
Do you find it very frustrating for you sitting there and realizing what may be more possible here in the States or even in the UK versus in South Africa, and go, seriously, we know it's out there, but I can't have it?
Yeah. And like I say, the questions that I asked Alper, in that 15 minutes has answered so many unanswered questions that if you ask the physicians in South Africa, okay, it's not that they're not knowledgeable, but it is the satisfaction that the patient wants with questions asked.
So give us an example of one question that you had that they answered for you in a minute or whatever it was.
The question that I asked Dr. Alper, okay, when does the onset of complications start? And in a simple way that Dr. Alper actually answered me, it could happen from the very start of your diabetes, in simple terms. It's not an onset of, it's age related. No. It could be from the onset of your diagnosis. And this is the question that I ask so many physicians, which they will say that type 2, it will start at a different age. The amputations, the diagnosis of diabetes type 2, with all my research and undoing, has got no age limit. Right. So for me, every question and everything that I've actually wanted was answered in 15 minutes. And I'm happy. I'm satisfied. Being here at ADA, I was invited, and it's an overwhelming knowledge. I've got no more words.
Yeah, and what were some of the key takeaways, Dr. Alper? Because you definitely are a presenter. You've been involved in the higher level meetings as well. What are some of the things you're most excited about taking away from this meeting?
Well, first and foremost, ADA has recognized finally that obesity is becoming an epidemic in this country, which is leading to things like you were talking about earlier, Kim, with teenagers suddenly developing catastrophic signs and symptoms of diabetes. So we are actually forming an obesity committee to address obesity issues, lifestyle issues, to hit hard against people with type 2, against the folks with pre-diabetes, so that we can help them along with that. And to Sally's point, get to them before the conference center. That is the first thing. The second big thing that's ticking up here is to raise the level of the diabetic nurse educators, of the secondary providers, who very often have the patient time and the patient faces to really educate. We all know that you got that 6-minute doctor visit nowadays. No offense, John. And so the amount of time that they have to get in there, physicians nowadays deal with your acute issues, but the chronic issues is where the doctor support team comes in. And so more and more, making sure that these folks have the tools, have the education to really impart it on the patients and allow the patients to help themselves. The third big issue, I just sat through a 2-hour meeting on this, is health disparities, the inequity of availability of healthcare in America. Salih talks about the fact that it's hard to sit in South Africa and see what we have in America. Imagine sitting in Alabama or Mississippi, knowing what's available 30 miles over and not being able to have it because you can't afford it, because the doctors are 40, 50, 60 miles away, and it's a 3-hour round trip for a dialysis. We're starting to recognize this more, that in this country, we need to get more equity in the availability of health, that we shouldn't be able to tell whether you get care or not, depending upon the zip code you live in. And so
Right.
these are the type of non-medical conversations, but diabetes care conversations that we're having here as well.
There's a couple of points that you hit on, and I'd like to, if we can, address them one by one. And they all go hand in hand, right? But so let's talk about obesity. You have a number of individuals, probably in the millions of Americans, who do not exercise regularly, and they may or may not see the benefit of it. But regardless, they don't do that. Plus, the food that they eat is horrifically bad for them.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them can't afford fresh fruits and vegetables. I mean, inflation, all these other things. So what is the ADA, in your opinion, doing how do you curb this epidemic of obesity in the United States? I mean, when you travel outside the US, people aren't they're not as obese as we are. I think it's because we're mobile and we don't eat right. How do you fix that? I know you can't fix that in like one sentence, but I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, if anyone
I mean,
can fix it,
great,
Dr. David Alper can.
Well, I mean, John, you're right. You've got the Mediterranean diet, Greece, Italy, etc., where they're eating fresh vegetables, fruits. It's available. It's part of their culture. Here, one of the things ADA is doing is partnering with these charitable organizations that are actually gathering up food that normally goes to waste and making it available to the communities. We just heard about over 15 million pounds of food being dispersed through Ohio by one of these charitable organizations of people that just got together, ordinary people, and said, we've got to be able to get this food to people as opposed to a landfill, and they need it. And you're absolutely right. Exercise is another story. That's a lifestyle change. That's something AI is not going to change. That's somebody teaching people to, again, own their disease. Right. You're going to lose that unless you start walking. Kim, you and your organization does that better than anybody. But that's exactly the type of thing that we need to be getting across them. So some of it is patient. Some of it is coming from help from places like ADA. But
it's interesting because I'm sorry, it's interesting because Josh, our YouTube producer, actually just said that Joe Rogan said it best, and he calls the fad of Ozempic, the medication that is very popular right now to help patients lose weight, especially, and control their diabetes. He actually called it outsourcing discipline. And I think that sums it up right there.
It's absolutely true. But here's the two facts about it. Number one, Ozempic will cost anybody $400 to $700 a month.
Yeah.
So there's your health equity. You're not getting it to the poorest of the poor that need it. The second thing is, if you speak to physicians, John, I'm sure you know this, the minute they get off the Ozempic and they've lost the weight, guess what? That hunger comes back. Nobody suddenly built, an anti-cheesecake right in their mouths. They can go right back to all the bad habits again.
100%.
And so it's not a solution.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And I know we've got about 30 seconds left, but these GPL-1 agonists, which that's what the Ozempics are, they're fantastic, but you have to use them in conjunction, and you have to have a plan to lose the weight. You have to exercise, and you have to change how you eat, because you're exactly right. You stop the medication, the switch that you turned off flips back on, and you start. So Joe Rogan's absolutely right. We have,
ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, as much as I do not want to interrupt, we have to go to commercial right now. So you'll be listening here on KDOW with the Heart of Innovation.
Sharpen your focus.
John, it was the same thing with bypass surgery. How many patients of yours had the sleeve, lost a ton of weight, and then blew right through it again? I'd say, honestly, 50% of mine.
I made the mistake when talking to a patient a couple months ago who was morbidly obese, and I said, you should consider, weight reduction surgery or something. And he's like, I already had it. I'm like, oh, okay. But again, you have to be disciplined, and it's easier said than done. But you have to be disciplined if you want it. But in the same vein too, it's kind of like tobacco use. it's just like it becomes such a habit for people that they don't know anything else. It's like brushing their teeth every day,
Yeah.
smoking a cigarette and eating a cheeseburger, or it's a heck of a lot easier to run to McDonald's than it is to make some broccoli and a chicken breast or something. So, and a hell of a lot cheaper
And
too.
cheaper. But here's the other thing. It used to be, if you remember, John, 5, 6, 7 years ago, when bypass surgery came out, every patient was required to have at least a month of psychiatric work before the surgery. And then you had the group therapy after. That's all gone now. You go in, you have the surgery, 2 days later, you're back on your whatever. And if you're taking away the one thing in people's lives that give them pleasure, which is eating, and you don't replace it with something, what the hell makes you think it's going to work?
Yep.
And this is exactly, and Ozempic is the exact same type of thing.
15 to alive.
Yeah, sugar is totally. But it's interesting. I think we need to focus on
We're live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
AM 1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And Kim, you gave us a little bit of a cliffhanger during break. You said, I think we should focus on what?
Well, I think we should focus on the learnings from the American Diabetes Association scientific sessions, in which we have both Salih Hendricks, our global PAD advocate for the Global PAD Association, and our board member, Dr. David Alper, that are both there at these sessions trying to help create the change that we all want to see. And before the break, we were talking about just simply the fact that that there's a lot that people need to do on their own to control the diabetes epidemic and prevent the complications, such as peripheral artery disease, those blocked arteries in the legs, but also we haven't mentioned coronary artery disease, which is also a complication because the plaque builds up in the heart. And Salih brought up something earlier that I do want to, before we jump into that, brought up a really good question earlier, which was, what is the onset of these complications after diagnosis? And I think it's the complications, as Dr. David Alper had told him, they're already happening even at the moment of diagnosis. And here's the reason why: because the diagnosis happens after those sugar molecules are already wreaking havoc on the body. Even one sugar molecule could end up scratching those artery walls, leading to that healing response, and the fats, the cholesterol going in to go ahead and either patch that up, or those small LDL particles can eke into those damaged walls that the sugar molecules are leading to, and eke out that artery wall, leading to the hardening of the arteries that we hear about, especially below the knees and into the foot, that are the most complicated to treat. And so, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say real quick that, at the end of the day, I think it's the education of the patient that is going to move this needle. And David, you had mentioned point 2 was increasing ancillary care. That's what they're talking about there, because there's a physician shortage. There's, there are not a ton of docs coming up the pipelines. And so we need these physician extenders to really help engage the patient and kind of create that it takes a village mentality to enact change.
100% correct. 100% correct. You've got, tons of doctors around Boston, Chicago, New York. But if you live in Cupcake, Montana, you're spending half the day just getting to the doctor. And with less and less doctors going into the field, especially primary care, we've got to use the other people that are there, that have the knowledge base. The fact that there's something called the diabetic nurse educator is invaluable, because that's what they're focused on, and they will spend the time with the patient. But once again, it's up to the patient to seek this out and to get it. That's sometimes the breakdown, which is why one of the things ADA is doing is upticking as well their public advertisements. They're going to be out there on your TVs, your radios, your social media, to make more and awareness. This show does a
Yeah.
tremendous job just for that alone.
And I think that it's really, and that's going to help a lot in terms of the pre-diabetes, the before the diagnosis, before the sugar molecules are actually causing the problem, and that's long before the diagnosis as well. I think that those nurse educators can actually, or the PAs or the ancillary staff, right? They can all get in at an earlier level with these patients during their annual exams, long before, I mean, even at the teenage level, to help them to understand, what is diabetes? What does just one sugar molecule do to damage those arteries? What's that real impact of just that one extra bite of cake, right? Or that extra carb that you're taking in, an unhealthy carb that you're not exercising. What's going to happen with that carb if it's not being burned off, right? But that needs to be done much earlier, and I think that AI could actually help with that as well.
Well, you're probably right there, Kim, because AI can help. I mean, think about it. I have two teenagers, actually just three, because I don't know, she's 21. So anyway, so I've got three in the teenage room. I don't know that they've ever thought about what they put into their bodies that, oh, this can cause diabetes for me. They probably don't even know what that term means. So I think AI can educate them. They are on their phones constantly. Not my kids, but kids. So I mean, there's a tool there. That is where the proactive starts, because I mean, think about it. I don't recall when I was 16, 17, 18 thinking about, oh, well, geez, these French fries that could cause diabetes and I could lose my leg and have a heart attack. Doesn't even register with me. Didn't register with me, I should say.
But John and Kim and Dr. Alper, it is something that just came to mind now. Advocating for so long for diabetes, how can the global diabetes advocacy on diabetes be helpful to physicians like yourselves in a way of promoting a healthier life? We're looking after ourselves. We see other diabetics. We want to peer support. But how can we do extra work and actually get the approval of doctors to go out there?
It's a great question. I mean, I'm as guilty as any physician out there. When I see a patient who is a diabetic, I know they're diabetic, and I say, well, make sure you get your blood glucose levels under control, and that that hemoglobin A1C that we talk about, that gives us that picture of 3 months of prior sugar levels. Get that below 6. I'll see you later. I'll see you next year. Oh, by the way, the stent I put in your leg is open. I'm happy. I'm patting myself on the back. The stent I put in your heart looks good. But again, I'm as guilty as the next guy. So I would love to be able to have a resource that said, okay, I've got an engaged patient here. Go talk to these folks. Get involved with this organization. But I don't know where to turn sometimes.
Because
what about some sort of?
So sorry,
Go ahead, Salih.
Just on that point, because on one session from yesterday, okay, the topic of if I get up in the morning, my sugar levels, I'm speaking of MMOL levels, say for example, if it's at 5.5, it's beautiful, or 6, okay, that's about close on to 173 if you convert it. It is something that I wake up with a beautiful reading, but as soon as I move around the house, my sugar level spikes up. Why? Because the glucose in your muscles, the liver is giving you extra glucose. So it is a topic that came up, the spiking of non-carbs related type of levels that rises. You're not eating, we've got enough, as to say, but those are the topics that came up on sugar rises without eating. And if we do sports, our sugar rises. So if you go to the doctor for a checkup, you're excited, you are rushing to the surgery, to the doctor's consulting rooms. We are stressing, our levels goes up. So these were the topics that we discussed yesterday, on why aren't you looking after your sugar levels? It's high. but they're not. It's something that we just want an answer from physicians on. I think myself and John also spoke about it in previous topics where the empathy comes in from physicians on why did your sugar level spike? Is it from
Yeah.
food or non-foods? You know?
And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we're going to hear from Dr. David Alper and Dr. John Phillips. Maybe there's an answer to that. So stay with us right here on KDOW and the Heart of Innovation. Don't go away.
No, I mean, at the end of the day, it's tied into what you're.
Everyone's clear on that side.
So we have just 4 minutes here on this one. It's very, very quick. So think of, the real, key takeaways, maybe answer that question. I think that's an interesting, I think that there's this insulin dependence now, not only with type 1s, but also with type 2s, because people are not able to, they're being offered the medications right away. And it just leads to this vicious cycle of you're up, you're down, you need to eat carbs, you need to take more insulin. Like it just becomes this vicious cycle. But is there really an answer to kind of stopping this vicious cycle of ups and downs? Is there any possibility in the near
15
future
seconds till we air, and just for everybody, as soon as you hear the music, we have 30 seconds to get out with the last segment.
So
all right, we're live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to the Heart of Innovation. For more on today's topic, go to theheartofinnovation.org. That's theheartofinnovation.org. Once again, here's Emmy Award-winning journalist Kim McNicholas and interventional cardiologist Dr. John Phillips.
Boy, time flies when you're having fun. We could continue this conversation for at least another hour, perhaps a couple of days. But nonetheless, to answer at least my two cents on that last question from Sallie about the spiking, despite what sounds like not really eating, I have adapted I try to, and I'm not perfect, but I adapted the caveman type mentality of eating. When you were a caveman or a woman, when you woke up in the morning, there was probably not much food, maybe some nuts, but then you had to go hunt and kill whatever it is you were going to eat. You most likely ate in the afternoon. You were done eating by probably 4 o'clock. I think there's really something to intermittent fasting, but at the end of the day, you have to eat less and exercise more. David?
Nothing to add to that, John. The only thing, like I said, is, and I've said it several times, people need to accept the fact they have diabetes, to own it and be ready to work with it. We face a cultural problem because, as we know, diabetes is very strongly inherited. And when you are part of a culture where beans and rice or plantains is a major part of your diet culturally, that makes it difficult to fight it. How many times I amputated toes and feet, and I, felt bad telling the patient, and they would look at me and say, well, now at least my feet will look like grandma's. And I was more upset than they were because it's just part of their culture. And so that education runs into roadblocks with that are really difficult to sometimes overcome with patients. You look at somebody from the Caribbean, you can never eat plantains again. Well, guess what? They're going to find another doctor.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to be, and real quick, I'll let Sallie and Kim comment, but I hate to be a pessimist, but I mean, is this a war we're never going to, I mean, do you think we can win this war? Honestly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I do. 100% no. But can we make it a whole lot better? We know that 85% of the amputations in this country are preventable with early intervention.
Yep.
We have to do a better job of looking early. It's really it's as simple as that. And that statistic has been thrown all over this place for the last 2 days. Sallie, you jump in.
Yep, Sallie.
Actually, in a way that it is in a way that the patient can understand in the layman's terms.
Yeah.
And not actually scaring them away.
Yeah, and that's true. We have to present that in a way that patients the education about diabetes, not to scare them, because, that doesn't work, obviously, even with cigarettes or with drugs. It's like that scare tactic. Maybe it might work for some, but for the majority, they become immune to it. They become numb to it. So we have to do a better job to take people on this journey to eating better, to exercising, to make it cool to eat better, to make it cool to exercise.
Exactly. And I think I was just getting back to that whole teenage and your comment about talking to teenagers. I mean, imagine if you said to, a 16-year-old, oh, you probably shouldn't have that hamburger. That's not good for you. In their mind, well, I'm indestructible. I don't need a seatbelt. I mean, like all these things. So it's just our culture is such that, and I think adults too think, oh, you know what? It's not that really big deal to have a hamburger as a little kid. I mean, and I'm not trying to say no hamburgers, but I'm just thinking like change starts early on, and that's, in my opinion, how we will win this war.
I agree 100%. Well, thank you so much, Dr. John Phillips, but also Salih Hendricks, our Global PAD Association's Global PAD advocate, and Dr. David Alper, our board member, both live at the American Diabetes Association's scientific sessions in Orlando, Florida. We appreciate you bringing this discussion to the forefront. Certainly more discussions to be had. We look forward to seeing so much more from the ADA in the coming year and helping to create the change we all want to see, which is lower diabetes and lower amputations. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Amen to that, Kim.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Sorry, guys, the gerbil kicked out again.
No, that's okay. It ended on a perfect note because we could just pick it up. And since we were tight on time, I just picked it up and ran with it on that one, which was totally fine. I thought that was a really great discussion, really interesting, and so candid.
Yeah, it's just it gets. I mean, Kim, how many times have we talked about it? And I guess you keep talking about it, but you've really, you have to. It gets frustrating sometimes that you just keep having the conversation, but do we really come up with concrete answers? Are we really enacting change? I see it in some of my patients, like the light switches on for them, but others, you can just tell, like, this doesn't matter. They're not going to change. And it's sad, but I guess it's the horse to water statement.
John, how many times do you see an obese father and mother in their 40s with really fat little kids, and you could cry? And when we were young, you just never saw that. Mom and dad, maybe they're lost causes. But when I see a kid with a double chin who's 8, I mean, there's just nothing sadder. On the other hand, maybe that's all they can afford. There's a cultural,
understood. And that's the problem, because the disparate, it costs and this is, I'm just going to say this, my opinion. We're spending, I forget what the number was, tens of billions of dollars in sending aid to the Ukraine, which is great. And I get it, global political stuff. But how about putting some of that back into our country and helping fight these pandemic? And I think these are forgotten people, frankly. I mean, a lot of them are forgotten. The politicians want their votes, but after that, they're forgotten, in my opinion. Disclaimer, my opinion.
Well, and I can't completely disagree. I don't know if you saw the heat map that was created, where they overlaid the incidence of amputations to zip codes and economic. Well, it doesn't take rocket science to figure out where in the world those hot spots were. I mean, it's Mississippi, Alabama, even in Massachusetts, Fall River, with a really high Portuguese population. And they're forgotten people. They're just forgotten people. You can't get a doctor in there, in a million years. So what do you do? I mean, one of the programs we used to have, it must have been around when you were around, John, where the government would pay your tuition as a doctor in exchange for years of indentured service. So you got a free ride, and then you gave them 4 or 5 years in an underserviced area. Everybody won. Why in the world did we stop this? Why in the world did we stop this? People would look to a program like that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you've got less and less people going into primary care. They're shouldering hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And if you do one of those things, yeah, you're an indentured servant, but you either most of them, I don't think a lot of them stay in those places, but maybe if you keep a running cycle about it. I mean, so
Keep
for example,
rotating.
yeah, there's a small town 90 miles east of me called Cambridge, Ohio. I love the place. Socioeconomically a lot lower than that of Columbus. We can't get a cardio. We have one cardiologist there. She's been there for 10, 15 years. We cannot find another cardiologist to work there. Like nobody wants to live in these, they don't want to live there. And, so we end up sourcing out these patients and they'll drive for some stuff, but they won't drive for other things. And I think they do feel like they're forgotten. And you know what? If no one else cares about me, why should I care about myself? And the towel.
Well, and that's exactly it. That's how you spiral down.
Douglas, my friend.
Yeah, Douglas with the Warrior. I'm part of the Warrior Task Force. Go back one step. When you said that about being scared, I know at least two people who told me today they weren't going to watch this show because it scares the hell out of them to even think about this topic and to even talk about it, because Mr. Phillips said the same thing about eating. One's trying to stop smoking, is trouble trying to stop smoking, and they want me to eat right. They want me to do this. And I hear it over and over and over. And it's like, it scares me just to think I have diabetes. I'm going to die tomorrow from it.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Well, but Douglas, it's, and again, easier said than done for me. But I know that when I am scared about something or I have anxiety, that paralysis by analysis doesn't help me. And I know that if you just kind of face that fear and get after it or do something, an object in motion stays in motion. So at least do something. And once you do something, you do another thing and you keep moving and then that fear goes away. But
the one lady said to me, she said that I understand about smoking. We hear it over and over and over. But generally speaking, she said, when I think about smoking, I don't institute it with death. But the moment I hear the word diabetic, I institute that with death. Does that make sense? That's what goes on in her thinking.
Yep, I understand it. And so again, you hear the word cancer and you think about death. You hear the word diabetes, you may or may not think about it. You hear the word PAD, you don't think about it. But we've talked about this on a number of occasions. Diagnosed with PAD has worse outcomes than a lot of cancer. I basically tell patients, you have cancer of the arteries, and we're not going to cure it, and you need to change your ways. That sparks a little bit of concern in their eyes. But to your point, if the things that Salih and David are doing, and what we're trying to do here on the Heart of Innovation, it's just raising awareness, and I guess you continue to beat the drum, and then if more people beat the drum, the noise gets louder, and then maybe it'll be heard.
And that what like Dr. Alper was saying earlier about when I talk to people about smoking, used to be we would hammer them on smoking, but now we have to. Now it's like that. You said you can't lead a fish to water. I just have to remind them over and over and over. But I can't beat them over the head with it sometimes because they're not going to get it right if I just force it down them. Is that the same way?
How does that equate to being scared then? If they're getting them, I mean, I don't think that's square. I think that's turning a blind eye, like it won't happen to me.
That's the same terminology. It just depends on the terminology you're using there.
Well, I don't think so, because I was scared crapless and I quit smoking and started walking. I mean, that's what scare did to me. I didn't turn away from it. People have choices.
It's with drinking. You can tell people about drinking. It's the same thing. So okay. I think, like Dr. Alper was saying, I like that idea. Is the education part in it is so important about the eating, the smoking, and walking. That one lady today said, she said, well, all I hear is walk, 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 but I can't walk. I hear walk, 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 but I can't walk. And it's like, did you walk to the end of the couch? No, because I don't want to. Well, what your part in this process, right?
That's what my point is. You have to own
Listen,
it. I mean, being scared, I was scared. Everybody's scared. You have to do something about it.
Oh, yeah. I used to tell my patients, you can't walk a half an hour, walk 10 minutes 3 times a day. It is the exact same benefit. So you can't walk a half an hour? I totally buy it. I believe you. Give me 10 minutes 3 times a day. To your point, walk around the couch, walk up and down the hall. You don't have to go outside. You don't have to go to a park. If you're worried about falling, walk up and down the hall. You got a wall on either side. But people need to own it.
You're exactly right. You need to own it.
I mean, my God, John, do you even bother operating on people that are still smoking? I mean, what a waste of time.
I do. Some people don't because I
mean, of course you do, but
I mean, right. No, you're exactly right. But I, honestly, David, there are people that won't. The Claudicans and those that are on the verge. But I know people that will not operate on them. I don't believe that that's the I don't know if
it's
that's
not the best
right
approach.
term, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's the best term, but you got to scare the living SHI blank out of them. That's what I try to do. But I have a patient that I adore her, and I don't know if I told this story or not, but she had came about 7 years ago, came to me with claudication, leg pain. I said, let's get a CAT scan, okay, see what's going on. Well, we get a CAT scan. She's a longtime smoker, so is her husband. We pick up a small nodule in her lung. Turns out to be non-small cell or small cell, I can't remember. Anyway, it's localized, stopped smoking, resected, radiation, boom, she's cured. 2 years later, she starts smoking again. I mean, it boggles my mind. And so there's nasty forces out there. I get it. But to your point, David, you've got to take control of it and own it. By the way, Douglas, I'm loving the beard, like that little kind of that's pretty sweet, dude. That looks awesome. I love it.
Well, on that note,
I have another question for y'all also. How big a difference have you seen, this is for Salih, from where you were diagnosed to where you are today? How big a difference?
Just real quick, Salih, before you answer that, David, thanks for joining us. I know you got to run, and offline, I'd love to chat with you because I'd love to get involved, if possible, with the ADA and that obesity task force that they're putting together.
John, it would be my absolute pleasure. We know how to reach each other. Let's make it happen.
Perfect. Thank you.
And we'll let Kim pay for the beers.
Yes, exactly.
Take care, sweetheart.
I love it.
See you guys.
I will see you around the meeting.
All right.
Here.
Yeah.
Cheers, everybody. Take care now.
Just before you session coming up now, right? So I want to say goodbye from my side. Thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate everything. But
we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much, Salih. We appreciate you being there, holding down the fort, and definitely representing us so well. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay.
I got to run as well. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Love it.
Okay,
Kimberly,
bye-bye.
I will give you a call early next week, and we can talk about game day, getting involved a little bit. And I'm going to reach out to those Inari folks as well. So cheers.
Sounds good.
Okay. See you
Much
guys.
love to you guys. I
Bye,
think
guys.
that this has actually been such a great conversation. There's so many things that I've wanted to jump in with. Douglas and
finance,
Marsha. And wow, we have
Rated.
some good background noise from the KDOW studios that I think that we could probably mute while we're continuing this conversation. But I'm hoping that everybody can hear me. But I wanted to address what both Marsha and Douglas were rightly talking about, which is, you know, when it comes to diabetes, and Douglas saying that there were people that didn't want to show up because they just didn't want to face it because they feared coming. And then Marsha coming in and saying, well, you know, they're just turning a blind eye. And I think that they're turning a blind eye because they are scared. And so they're scared to face it. It's just like with smoking. They don't want to look at, you know, the fact, they don't want to think about the fact that it is dangerous, right?
Ricky
Josh,
Henderson was a baller. Truth.
I wondered
Watch
if you
24
could mute. There we go. Mute him. There we go. Sorry about that, everyone. But I think that that's a really good way to look at it, is that the people that are turning a blind eye, I think that they're scared to actually face it, right? And so they just continue smoking, because if they don't see no evil, hear no evil. Not going to happen to them. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to think about it, right? They just want to continue doing what they're doing and thinking that they're maybe invincible. Am I alone?
No.
Okay. I thought I was just on a soapbox talking to myself.
No, and when she was describing it to me this morning, that's what she was saying. She said, and one of the other comments to me was, I know I have it, but I'm tired of talking about it. That was one of the reasons why somebody told me this morning they weren't going to be here, because he said, I'm just tired of talking about it. It's just a repeat over and over. So it's like, how do you
reach those people, right? How do you reach the people that actually, I mean, you know, people still want to do what they want to do. I mean, and that is a big issue. And I think that also is, to Marsha's point, you know, there is that one point that people are turning a blind eye because they are scared to face it. But then I think that there is that other side to it where they just don't want to face it. They are turning a blind eye because they just want to do what they want to do. And they think that they want to believe that they're invincible. And that, how do you reach those people? I even know with my dad, well, you know what? He, you know, gets upset sometimes when I tell him, no, you can't have that. You know, you're pre-diabetic. I don't want you to become a full-blown diabetic. Well, he's like, well, just leave me alone. Just let me eat it. One is not going to hurt, but then it becomes one, and then it becomes two, and then it becomes three. And, you know, throughout the day, well, we let you have the one, you know, banana nut muffin. And then it was like, well, the rest of the day I'll eat healthy. Well, no, you don't, because then you get at lunch and then you're starting to eat lots of garlic bread along with your salad. And then it becomes dinner where, oh my gosh, suddenly they have key lime pie, which is absolutely delicious and that's hard to resist. And oh, maybe tomorrow I'll eat healthy and it'll make up for today. And so where do you draw the line? Where do you actually, you know, get that discipline that Joe Rogan was talking about? You know, everyone wants to outsource that discipline to Ozempic, to another medicine. Give me a pill. Let me eat what I want. And so I don't have to, just give me a pill so I don't have to worry about my diet. I don't have to exercise. Are we going to change those people that believe or have that mindset?
You know, it's hard.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Douglas.
No, go ahead. What were you saying?
Well, I was going to say life is hard, and you get news like if you found out you had cancer and you could go to chemotherapy, would you say no? You know, chemotherapy, I mean, I've never been through it, but, you know, I've watched loved ones. It's hard. It sucks, but people do it. You know, it's hard to give up Dr. Pepper. It's hard to give up McDonald's. It's hard to give up cigarettes. It's hard. But, you know, you have to dig deep down in yourself and you have to find the strength. I mean, I never thought I could do any of this, but I did. And so I think a lot of times it's a cop-out. People don't want to do the hard work, and it's hard. I don't want to go through chemotherapy ever. But if I got cancer, I would. But that's just my mindset. I know some people don't want to face it. They're like little kids. You know how people, when a child is behind a curtain hiding, but you can see their shoes and the bump in the carpet, and they think because they can't see anybody, nobody can see them. Well, you can hide, but it's still going to get you. I mean, you have to, you know, you have to come out and face it.
I also know 30 years of experience has taught me sometimes that I think when I was listening to what she was saying, it was like she'd been beaten up so many times with do this, do this, do this, do this. And there's that combination of what we're all talking about that comes together in a place. And you have to reach I had to try and reach her and get her to think about it in a different way from another perspective of other than beating her over the head with it. So there is a combination of all of it that sometimes has to work with some, and sometimes other people. I know other people in addiction, you just got to be brutally honest with them. You're just brutally upfront, totally honest with them, and they're okay. But there are other people that, I hate to say this, it sounds kind of fishy, but you have to beat around the bush with sometimes to get them to a place where they're actually listening and not closed off. So
yeah,
that's
the key. It's reaching people where they are and guiding them where they want to be, which everybody wants to feel and wants to be able to do what they want. And I like to say, and my philosophy is, Douglas, if you want to have a Dr. Pepper once in a while, Dr. Pepper once in a while, but really does it have to be an everyday thing? I just was able to turn, a lovely couple that we met on the cruise around in terms of theirs, the one, the wife, absolutely loves her Coca-Cola. She loves her sodas. And I was able to introduce her to the sparkling water and naturally infused Sicilian vinegar that you can mix. Meaning that did I disappear?
Yeah, you broke up just for a second.
Oh, sorry. So I was able to say, hey, you know what? You like your sparkling, sweet, fizzy something, right? That's satisfying for you. But what if we could change that? What if we could find you an alternative that's just that much healthier? And I was able to get her, to adopt, drinking this sparkling water mixed with some white balsamic, naturally infused vinegar in the flavor of Sicilian lemon. You also can get black cherry, or you can get Granny Smith apples from Amphora Nueva. And she absolutely loves it. And so she's like, you know what? I think I'm going to throw out all my soda pop because this is so much more satisfying and it is healthier. So if everyone could come forward and say, hey, and admit to what are you struggling with most, and then we help people to come up with healthier alternatives. Not to say that you can't ever have a soda, right? Not to say that you can't ever have that chocolate piece of cake. Not to say you can't ever have that Krispy Kreme donut or that Whopper from Burger King or the Happy Meal from McDonald's. But let's not make it a habit. Let's make it the exception to the rule. And let's find you something that's equally as satisfying.
So here's another question I had. I would like to have the doctor's answer. My Facebook is being bombarded right now by this lady who says she can cure PAD and diabetes. I don't know if this lady's on Dr. Phil. She's all over the internet right now, and I can't remember her name, but she says you go through this thing and you got to get on her page and buy this stuff. And she says it cures diabetes and PAD. I'll have to send it to you so you can see it.
Well, there are a lot of scams out there, but the fact of the matter is that there are so many natural ways in which you can get a handle on your diabetes. And one of the ways, if you go to Amazon and you pick up our book from the Global PAD Association called Food for Thought, a PAD warrior's guide to eating better, you can find in there's studies that show that Ceylon cinnamon tablets or capsules actually can help balance your A1C naturally. But you have to read the studies and then talk to your own healthcare provider to see if it's something that's right for you. But there are these supplements, there are these natural methods that can actually help you to get a handle on your diabetes and ultimately get a handle on mitigating your risk for further atherosclerosis, which can be in your legs, which is peripheral artery disease, or in your heart, which is coronary artery disease, right? And we even have Dr. Michael Danziger, who is our medical director, who has come on quite a bit. And he says, hey, I have a diabetes reversal program, but it is work. It is work. It is us actually becoming better partners in our care. It's eating what we should be eating, and it's exercising, but you can do it naturally. Now, for some people, they're so far beyond that their A1C is so high and they've caught it so late, and they've developed these horrific habits that are just so tough to break. And not to be degrading, I'm not trying to be degrading on, in saying that, but they are really bad habits that are tough to get control of. It's like the smoking addiction or drug addiction or alcohol addiction, right? Or even sugar addiction. You become you've gone so far down the rabbit hole that you need to just do it step by step. Well, the medications can help to give you that little push, that extra push that you need. But it's really going to come down to you being disciplined, as Joe Rogan said. You can't keep outsourcing your discipline. You got to take control. You got to be a partner in your care and create the change yourself that you want to see in yourself, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's that taking that one extra step. When I told, well, why can't you just walk to the end of the couch? How many steps is that? She said it's about 4 steps. I said, that's 4 steps that you haven't taken. Even though it's just 4 steps, it's still 4 steps.
That's exactly right.
And some people, I don't know who who you had the conversation with, but they might not get up and go to the mailbox, but they might be able to get up and go to McDonald's. It depends on what their motivating factor is.
We were just talking about walking, and I put a little thing out. I did a little thing where when I'm using my saw now, I'm doing calf raises. I'm standing in place, but I'm moving back and forth. And every time I move forward, I raise, because the calves are the second part of our muscles. So they pump blood back up. So I'm doing calf raises. That's the whole point about calf raises. It's just, I told her I was going to send her some Dollar General paper plates so she could sit still and move her feet back and forth. I said, any movement is better than no movement at all.
Douglas, I do that in the shower every day.
So, yeah. And I think it does go back to trying and doing things different. I'll tell y'all how I'm going to get rid of I've been watching my sodium real much. My neighbor was sitting here yesterday, right next to me. We were talking about all this. She says, I can help you fix that. It's like, how? She goes, go tomorrow morning, which I did this morning. I bought some celery. I bought some carrots. I bought some the Brussels sprouts and some green beans and 12 chicken legs or wings. I bought the wings, brought them over to her house. We put them in a pot that was about this big, and we're going to boil it. And then we're going to take it out. We're going to put it in bags, and we're going to freezer those bags. And when I looked at it, it was like that just got rid of all the sodium. Yeah, it's going to take a little extra work to do all this, but I just knocked out all my sodium, and I can use that chicken broth for my Instapots that died. I have a new Instapot, but my Instapot that Kim and them bought me died yesterday or the day before. It just gave up the ghost finally. So I had to get a new one.
But you know what is so impressive is that you have literally become so much, committed to your own health that you could have easily said, you know what, the Instapot died. I'm just, I can't afford it. I'm not going to do it. But you went ahead and you found a way to make it happen. You found a way to get one. You didn't even let me know, or else I would have helped to get what you want if you needed. But you made it a priority that was a big part of your process for eating healthier. And I love that. I think that's great. You deserve a lot of credit for that one.
And it was like what she told me about this. So it's over there cooking, boiling right now. So later on, when it's done boiling, I'll go back over. We're going to take it out, put it in these bags, and they have one of those things you run it through that sucks it all. What do they call that?
A sealer.
Yeah, they seal it. That way I can put them, I should be able to make 12 bags. So when I get ready to do my Instapot, all I got to do is defrost these and drop them in there. And it's taken, there's no sodium in it now whatsoever, no sugars. It's all vegetable and chicken.
Douglas, so, I have a question for you, because I kind of suggested this to you a long time ago, and you said you didn't have space.
Well, the difference is when I went over there this morning, they already had some stuff that was sealed, and I can take those 12 bags and put them in my freezer right now, and it fits in there, because instead of having these big, like little Tupperware things, it's like this small.
That's what I'm doing right now, Douglas. So I'm going to cook for the week.
It's like, and she said that with what we're doing right now, there's probably 3 or 4 weeks worth of Instapot material right here that you can use chicken broth and do the same thing with the Instapot, but I don't have to worry about the sodium now because it's all. And it was like, oh, okay. Hello. It finally, I guess it went through one ear and out and didn't go out the other one, It stuck somewhere in there. So it was like, that's cool, but it just happened chance that we got to talking about it. So
you know what, Douglas? I'm so glad that you listened to her, because I think sometimes, and I'm not pointing the finger at you, but in general, we find excuses. So we don't actually hear what somebody's telling us. You're like, oh, that works for you. No, I couldn't do that. That works for you.
We do.
And like excuses. You now are open. You have opened yourself up to solutions instead of saying no.
But I think that you're absolutely right about that. But I also think sometimes we just have to be in the right frame of mind at that moment to hear what we need to hear. And it's like, I was talking to somebody else this morning about the new shoes I bought, the running shoes. I tried on 15 different pairs of shoes, went to 3 different stores, and it took me 2 months to save for these shoes. And they weren't that expensive, but they fit my feet perfect. And every time I put one on, all I could think about what Dr. Alper talked about her feet. That video just played over and over and over in my mind about my feet, and finding the proper shoes so that when I go to these walks on Mondays, these 5K walks, and I signed up for 2 more coming up. And
good for you.
So I bought these shoes, and they fit my feet perfect. They are the most comfortable shoes I think I've ever owned. And believe it or not, these came from Academy on sale for $69. But I had to take 2 months to save the money for them. But now it's like I had these, and I'm looking forward to walking Monday night. I'm looking forward to getting out later this afternoon and walking at the park. They're Isaacs. They're Isaac Gel Excite Trail 2. But I've never, and it was like, and I think that goes to that part, like Marcy and all of us have been talking about this hour, is taking that personal responsibility and taking that and running with it and being accountable for doing the right things. You saw the fruit baskets I'm making now, right? I'm making these fruits. It's got red apples, green apples, blueberries, red grapes, and I like cucumbers, so I cut up some English cucumbers, and I put that in there. But I have these now, so when I'm hungry or I need a snack, that's what I'm eating now. So, and believe it or not, that is a lot healthier. It's a little more expensive than the bag of chips I could eat that would, I want to eat, but it's better for me. So it is that accountability, and does it go back to one step at a time? We talk about that all the time, don't we? One step, right? It's taking that one extra step sometimes that we need to take. And that's what I tried to get her to understand. We'll get up, walk to the end of the couch, and come back. Yes, all right. So you did walk 10,000 steps today, but you got up and you did something. That's the whole point that we're all trying to understand. And we all have to get to some point, don't we? Making those little changes. Now I'm looking forward to, I made my own broth this morning, my own chicken broth. And it's like, cool. It really, I'm using her stuff, her pot, because I don't have the stuff here, but I went over and made my own chicken broth, and it has no sodium. So all the Instapot now stuff that I'm making has, for my chicken stuff, and my healthy stuff has no sodium and no sugars whatsoever.
Douglas, I didn't know if you could hear me or not. You are going to be surprised once if you do this for a while, and then you go and have a restaurant anything or a packaged anything, because there's so much sodium in them. You're going to be like if I have pizza out at a lot of places, I drink like a gallon of water afterwards. I'm like, oh my gosh, the sodium, because I'm not used to it anymore.
Well,
you're very shocked.
They took me somewhere to eat this morning for my birthday this past week, but it was chicken and dumplings, and it was an we have this old restaurant about an hour and a half from my house, and it's run by the Amish, and they cook all their food natural. But I took 2 bites, and it was like, this does have salt in it. And Julie sitting next to me said, no, it don't. I said, yes, it does. And I asked that gentleman that came back, the waiter, I said, does this, y'all make this with salt? Yeah, it has salt in it. And I could taste it. It was like, holy smokes, and I 5 years ago, I would have never, it's like, I argued with my mom all the time about that. No, it doesn't, you can't taste salt. No, you can't. I'm sorry. No, you can't. It's like, she would always tell me I could, but now I can, since I don't use salt. So, it's the smoking, the drinking, the walking, the Dr. Peppers, yes, all that good stuff. It really does become part of my responsibility in being responsible for my care as much as my doctors are, like Dr. Phillips was talking about and Dr. Alper is. But Kim, I'm sorry, there are days that what goes on between here and here wants a Dr. Pepper.
Right. And that is okay.
How hard is it for me to drive by Buc-ee's?
There is still a little bit of life to live, right?
Yeah. And how hard is it to drive by Buc-ee's and not want an icy Dr. Pepper? But I don't do it every day. If I did it every day, that would be different, wouldn't it?
Right. You want to make those types of things the exception to the rule and learn how to become satisfied by other things that are a little healthier. It's just, as I said earlier, with drinking the sparkling water, with the Sicilian vinegar. Now I actually crave that. And I crave it, especially just a little bit of it after a meal, because the Sicilian white balsamic vinegar, the one that we use from Ampora Nueva, has the same properties as apple cider vinegar, which are really healthy and help with your digestion. And so I really crave that after, especially if I'm out and about. There's a lot of salt in the meal. It actually helps satisfies get rid of that craving for more and more liquid. I drink a lot of water, but then a little sip of that just helps to curb that issue that I have after having a whole bunch of salt. But there are different alternatives. Like now, what I crave is I actually crave one of my dad's mushroom burgers. And it's a mushroom burger that is on a cauliflower bun. And that's made of just cauliflower, egg, and water. I mean, it's just very, very simple. And you can even make that at home. Get a big cauliflower for $1, chop it on up, grab a couple eggs, mix it up, a little bit of water in there, pat it down, put it in the oven, and you can make your own buns. Add a little pepper, add some oregano, add whatever spices you want, even a little cayenne, maybe a little curry powder, and you can have a very flavorful bun. But I crave that. And when I have regular bread, which I shouldn't have anyway because I am sensitive to gluten, but it feels heavy in my stomach. So I now have shifted my cravings to absolutely loving those cauliflower buns.
But can I ask you a question then?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at a piece of white bread or a piece of wheat bread and you're looking at it and this is not what I should have, what do we tell ourselves that it's okay at that moment? Well, this is just one piece and I haven't had one in like a month, so it's okay today. Are those some of the things that we do tell or justify or rationalize, whatever word you want to use? Uh-oh. I think Kim froze on us.
Okay, that same day. So, maybe this is better. So, okay, if you're saying you just want to have that one piece, you're looking at bread and you're like, okay, I have a piece of white bread or wheat bread. Well, that's equal to the wheat, so I'm going to have the wheat instead.
Uh-oh. We lost her. She went into alien space. And I think that goes
again.
No, there she is.
There I am. But if you're just going to have the one piece of bread, that's great. But, if you're asked, okay, well, I'm making a decision right now with bread, but then I'm also going to Buc-ee's and then I'm also going to go out to IHOP for dinner. Like, that's a lot.
Well, hold on now. Go back one second, because your statement was, I know I shouldn't have this bread because I have this. And how many times do those of us that are listening, how many times do we do that with things that we know we're not supposed to have? Does that make sense? How often do we? What's that?
Well, if you don't buy white bread, where are you going to get it? You're not eating at McDonald's. Where are you going to get white bread?
Well, see, I don't do that. Kim's statement was, I know I had this piece of bread and I know I'm not supposed to because I have this. So it's like, if I make the statement, I'm going to have some milk, even though I know I'm allergic to milk. That statement, just that statement, what is the thought process? Why we rationalize it this time, or we justify it, or that? Because how many of us in here don't always eat what we're supposed to eat? And the question for me is, what is that thought process that we all have, which is probably different for everybody? What is that thought process that we do have, that we're standing there at that moment and saying, I'm having this, I know it has milk in it, but I'm allergic to milk, but it's okay this time. What is that thought process that we go through?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to have a Benadryl afterwards. Last night I had a piece of chocolate cake that I knew had milk and gluten in it, and I had to take a Benadryl right afterwards. But I wanted that piece of cake. But you know what? I ate healthy for the most part throughout the day. And so it just comes down to discipline. Yes, we can have our cheats. That's great. Marcia
her cheat she talks about is she loves pizza, but she's not going to eat it every single day. And it makes her appreciate it so much more. But it also, what's interesting, what she was mentioning, is that she realized that because her diet for the most part is so good and low in sodium, that when she did have that pizza, it was almost like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. Am I enjoying this as much as I used to? Because I
look at it differently.
Yes.
I look at it differently. You're right. And if it's greasy, like, which is always the best, that for me, the cheesy, greasy, I can tell I'm so aware of the grease because I don't have that in my diet. Where it used to be, I just heat it up. And now
So
I guess I'm aware.
You feel that way, like I said, with that salt. I knew I could taste that salt because I don't use salt now. So when you eat pizza, if it's this piece is greasy or depending on where you get it or that, it's all made different, isn't it? So you can tell that now, can't you?
Oh, huge. Huge. Yeah.
There's a big difference.
And so if I do
a crappy pizza and a good pizza.
Right. And if I do splurge, say I've had a really, really good hiking week and I've been cranking it out, not my diet's been great, and I decide, I'm gonna have pizza, and I do. I mean, I have my moments where I do things that I probably shouldn't, but I am human. But now I choose carefully which pizza I'm gonna have. For me, if I had a piece of whole wheat bread that I flattened and threw some sauce on it, maybe some mushrooms, it probably tastes like pizza to me because, when you don't have it. So any kind of pizza is good to be, unless it's real salty and greasy. Yeah, I think
what I've absolutely, what I've taught myself over time, and my dad and I, we do get our pepperoni on the pizza. That's our one thing. But you know what? We've been able to adapt, and we now get or make a cauliflower crust. And then we use a very rich sauce and a lot more of the sauce, because the sauce isn't really, it's just marinara. It's just tomatoes, as long as you don't have the added sugars. The other thing that we
Oh, yeah. She's off and on. It sounds like she's rapping.
Guys hear me?
No, you're rapping there. It was like rapping.
Sorry about that. It's on my soapbox. I was the one.
Yeah. So, it's kind of crazy, isn't it? About the things we do, the things we don't do, how we think about things, how we don't. I was at a meeting an AA meeting the other night. This topic came up about being responsible for not drinking, and that thought process about, going to meetings and having a sponsor and all that. Is one of the gentlemen spoke up. He said, I just don't need all that. I can do this on my own. And half the people in the room suck their air out because we're all old timers and it have to look a certain way. Alan knows what I'm talking about. It's like, so if you go to meetings a lot, you get the old timers say it has to be done this way. Otherwise it doesn't work. But I have enough experience to know, I know people that just quit and never use again. I know people that do it all kind of ways.
15 hours in jail did it for me, and I just quit.
Yeah. That was enough, huh?
Yeah. Running around like an orange road cone did it for me. I was done.
So how do we convince people to get up and walk? How do we convince people to change their eating habit? And I think that's what
it's a choice.
How do we convince people to stop smoking, and do we go this direction or that direction? Do we, There's
You
so
want to
many.
hear an answer?
Go ahead. What is your answer?
Somebody's leg that is, or their toes are black and crusty and disgusting, or Alan, rehab on the, I don't know what that thing is, where you learn to walk on your prosthetic, or Sunshine Marie. I mean, all of those people were so instrumental to me that, it scared me. And I still have my leg. To me, that was huge. But you have to listen, you have to tune in, you have to hear it, and you have to see it. If you just turn away from it, it was not going to do anything for you.
Well, and you're absolutely right, but not everybody is ready at that moment. So, like Bobby is here with us. Can you hear us, Bobby? I think.
Bobby, you're on mute.
There he is.
Okay,
well, you're
yeah,
right.
I'm here.
Everybody
Hey,
is
buddy.
different.
Hey,
Yeah.
brother.
You've been dealing with COVID, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm just getting back on my feet here.
So,
Can I
it's
say
been kind of crazy, hasn't it?
It's just been my experience. So you could take what you like and leave the rest. But I've heard a lot about food today, and of course we have a support group here with us now that is very important and very critical. But there's support groups out there for the food too. And I know for myself, without the support of another person in another group, left to my own devices, I'm going to have a much, much more difficult time. And something I found out through Overeaters Anonymous is that a food plan is very helpful to help us establish food, and also have a food sponsor that I can stay in touch with on a daily basis and be accountable for my food every day. And the way that works is I will sit down the day before, or you can make it several days before, and you write out what a beautiful, perfect day of healthy food looks like for you. And you have that food in the house, and you write it down, and you stay accountable with the food sponsor. And I found that support group for all the support groups that I'm in throughout the years. It takes me a half hour to do my laundry list to help me move in the right direction. And I've also found that food addiction isn't about being hungry, and alcoholism isn't about being thirsty, and sex addiction isn't about being hungry. To a large degree, it's about stuff and feelings. And for me, I know I've had to start from the inside out, and clean house inside, with working on the resentments that I have, and working on the fears that I have, and putting the time and energy basically into a spiritual solution. And so I know that's kind of foremost in me, because it's just through the grace of God that I continue to be able to, that I'm still alive. And so I just want to thank everybody for being there for me today, and bless you all. I appreciate it.
So I have a question for you, and I have a question. So since you joined with us, we know you and I have talked, and we know you were doing the eating thing before. Now with this, do you see where it interlopes together, kind of, in how you deal with your eating habits and your PAD and walking in that? Do you hear me? Uh-oh. He kind of stuck too. But yeah, so we talked about that last week, the insanity of PAD and living life today, didn't we? And CAD and eating and all the things that we deal with. Kim is back. Welcome back. She keeps dropping in and out of the internet zone. So it was a good show today. Diabetes is something else, and it's changing a lot, isn't it? Are you driving over 80 miles an hour, Kim?
Was dissolved. So yeah.
Because it keeps cutting in and out. We're
Yeah,
55 in a 65 zone because the person in front of us is going so slow.
Well, as I was
But
saying,
we're getting
there's
there.
a lot of
Ann, are you still with us? No, she dropped off. So
I'll add to the conversation a bit.
Please do.
So one of the things that that the doctor was recommending was intermittent fasting. And this is something that I picked up, I want to say maybe 5-6 years ago. And I was listening again to the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking to not an Ironman triathlete, but one of those people that run 200-mile races, an extreme marathoner, or whatever. Ultra marathoner. Thank you. And every time he has these people on, he asks the question, what kind of workout do you do? What kind of diet do you have? And the ultra marathoner was like, oh, I eat at the end of the day. He's like, but I eat like a whole day's worth of meals at the end of the day, right? And he's already running a ton, so he's obviously going to be eating 4,000 to 5,000 calories. But what he said was it took like 4 days for his body to understand that he was only going to eat once a day. And so he explained that, your body is already trying to recognize that it's hungry. Okay, so there's a signal that your appetite is saying, hey, it's time to eat. And it's that condition. Your body's like, hey, it's breakfast time. Hey, it's lunchtime. And so in the first few days, those signals are screaming at you, right? So you just go and you eat. On the fourth day, they're not really screaming at you. They're like, hey man, should we eat? And that's a massive difference. So what I've also found is that by pushing my meal time to the, later in the day, I have what I can only explain as a baseline of energy that gets me through my entire working day without any meal crashes, without anything. And I can concentrate for hours and hours at a time without having any hit, without feeling tired or any of that. And so it took 4 days.
What is your calorie?
I have done that, Josh. That's what I do. And if I eat something during the day, especially a carb or a sugar, I just wipe out. Just wipe out. It has been great for me.
Yeah. Did you recall those first 4 days?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, but I was not only giving up, breakfast and lunch, but I was changing from, in the beginning, my body was hungry and I had been eating pizza and potato chips and, sugary donuts. And so in the beginning, I just would allow myself carrots. If I was hungry, I would give myself some carrots until I got it pushed back until it was dinner time. But yeah, that first week was awful. But now I have more energy. I get up. If I had a breakfast and then went hiking, you'd find me asleep probably after about 2,000 steps. Yeah, it's a fabulous way to go. And, I know there some people say it's great and other, studies or doctors don't care for it. But for me, it works. I believe it.
No, I agree.
And I dropped weight and kept it off.
That's the other thing, right? Like what we don't really want to talk about is the inflammation and what makes us chubby or what makes it's not that you're, obviously there's fat there, right? But also your body's inflamed, right? And when you think about what you're putting into your body, let's just call it, sugar is sugar. So you're eating sugar and your body's not, it's trying to process that sugar. Okay. And so what it does is it moves that sugar to the very first thing it's going to burn off. And what you were going to burn off now turns into fat, right? So that becomes your next layer of things to burn off. Well, if you're doing this 3, 4, 5 times a day, your body's under siege all day long, right? So your body doesn't get that rest period. And so when you start eating once a day over the course of several months, it's not a fast weight loss program. It's just simply your body's not under siege 4 or 5 times a day. And all of a sudden, your body starts repairing itself slowly but surely. And eventually, you start to get to a more resting weight that you're going to be walking around at. And then the next thing is, okay, so let's start physical activity 4 to 5 times a week.
So I have a question.
Shoot.
So if you eat that, here's the question. So if you eat 4 times a day, but you eat healthy 4 times a day, and you watch your calories, all that good stuff, and this is just a question: does that work for some people compared to the 4 days and doing it the other way?
Well, I'm not saying that there's one right way, you know. When I have to work and I have to work hard, if I'm grazing through the day, I feel the sugar spikes. I feel the sluggishness happen.
Okay.
And so that was the one thing that I recognized. So what I would end up doing was I would go and grab a snack, right, to try to eat my way through the sugar rush or whatever the crash was. And that would be good for 90 minutes. And then I would have to go grab another snack and then eat my way through that crash and then go grab another snack, right? And the part of the reason is because I work at my desk. It's a sedentary lifestyle, having to just sit down and crush through work versus, like he said, hunting and gathering, where you're out on your feet and you're just kind of moving around through your day. When you look at how many steps the different professions have, it makes a little bit of sense, right? If you go to McDonald's and you see everybody that works there that has a full-time job, they're all thinner than the people that work there part-time. And the reason why they're thinner, has nothing to do with what they're putting in their body. It's that they're walking like 30 to 40 steps because they're on an 8-hour shift and there's no place to sit down. So they're just moving. They're constantly moving, right? And that's any restaurant anywhere where you have a full-time person who's working on their feet full time. That's exercise, right? Then you look at every other industry, every other one of them. If you don't have the discipline to get on your feet and start pushing your body just a little bit, just 45 minutes a day, break it up however you want, but 45 minutes a day, that saves your life.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't. I'm so glad to hear you saying this, Joshua. And when I started this, I didn't do it on purpose to be a intermittent faster. I am accidentally, because once I didn't know what the science, and you just explained it, was, but I knew when I eat, I was going to eat all day long, but I could go and not eat. I could not eat until dinner time and it wouldn't faze me. But once I ate, I'm looking for food all day long. And you just explained why.
Well, no. I feel the same way, right? So your metabolism is at rest, and it's not, your metabolism is just there to crush food, just to process food, move it through the digestive system. That's its job, right? And so if it's not turned on, it's not on.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know all that when I started it, but that's what happened. Exactly.
Right. And so the other thing is, like, I have for a lifetime of sleep issues, sleep troubles. And so, if you eat too late in the day, that's going to affect your sleep. Right. So you don't want to push your dinner off too far into the day. It's again, one of the things the doctor said. He was like, you're going to meet back with the tribe. Everybody's going to have their daily meal. It's going to be like 4 or 5 o'clock, right? It's going to be after the noon time, but before the evening time. It's a gathering. The family gets together. Everybody, shares whatever their spoils were for the day. You eat, then everybody relaxes, and then the sun goes down, right? That's how our bodies are designed. When the sun goes down, ideally you should start feeling a little sleepy. You should start getting ready for nighttime, and you should go to sleep. And then, one day somebody found fire, and then one day somebody figured out candles, and then one day somebody figured out lights. And so
And then the
now,
internet.
yeah, and the internet, right? Now you have a flashlight in your hand staring into your eyes all day long. And so your sleep schedule gets, again, it's just like the other siege of food. It's the siege of light, you know?
So I have another question. They're just popping in here. Sorry. What about, so if you're thinking, and you said that, and I absolutely agree, but I have this thought also. Say you're a welder and you're out there in the heat and all that, and you need to put something in to keep you going through the day.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm making sense. So, like the different type of jobs, would that make that big a difference in an individual waiting till the evening to eat so some people at 8 o'clock in the morning have already done 10,000 steps on their job, and at break time they need a banana or they need some grapes.
I do that too. I mean, like right now it's really hot out. Tomorrow, for instance, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and go to this real pretty place, and I'm going to hike, and I'll probably be done by 8:30, and I'll have granola or a muffin. I mean, there are, because I have expended so much energy by then. My body thinks it's dinner time probably because I've been up.
But what ends up happening is you're burning through sodium, right? Because you're going to sweat, and as your body loses sodium, we demonize salt, but it's not that salt's a demon. Salt's necessary for, if you cut all of your salt out and you drink a bunch of water, you're not really hydrating, because salt's a requirement for that hydration process to get into the rest of our body, right? So as you're sweating, you start to lose salt. So when you watch marathoners, people that run for these 26-mile races, they'll grab a glass of orange juice and they'll put a pinch of salt in it, right?
I don't sweat though.
You're a lucky lady.
That's why I'll get up at 5:30 in the morning, because I should sweat. It's a healthy thing to do, but it grosses me out. But yes, you need salt in your diet. But if you are just sitting at your desk all day eating processed food, you're getting more than enough salt.
Oh yeah.
Like
Today's discussion.
I just prepared chicken and I sprinkled salt on it, but I haven't eaten all day. I haven't had sodium in anything all day. Mm-hmm. So you're right. A little bit of salt isn't bad. But if you sit down every day and have potato chips, you're getting more salt than you know.
Oh yeah. I was at a 5K walk last Monday and they had pickle juice. Mm-hmm. And one of the ladies behind me asked the gentleman, why is that pickle? Why do y'all have pickle juice here? He said, because if you drink this pickle juice, it puts in what your body just sweated out for that last mile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard of that too.
And she goes, oh, okay. And she tried it.
Is that the same, Josh? Is that the same as electrolytes?
That's exactly what electrolytes are. That's a salt component. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so if you can get your hands on like sugar-free Pedialyte or sugar-free Powerade, right? That electrolyte balance is the kind of thing. And what you don't know is that when you take that electrolyte imbalance, your decision-making skills get questionable. Your hand-eye coordination starts to drop. And then even your self-drive and self-discipline becomes, it gets eroded. And it's an interesting thing, because these are people who, if you're going to run that amount of time, you're going to be concentrating for that amount of time. So and the harder you concentrate, the more water you need, right? So when you look at people who play Texas Hold'em and they're at a tournament that's running multiple days, if they're just slamming alcohol and they're not hydrating, they start making bad decisions. And it's because their concentration is off. Yeah.
When I started hiking, I thought oh, go ahead, Douglas.
No, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, when I first started hiking, I bought an emergency kit. They say there's something called the 10 essentials. But anyway, I bought this emergency kit to carry. And one of the things in it is a little packet, and, for I guess it's electrolytes. And I do carry it. I shouldn't say I never sweat, but I don't prefer it. I don't like the heat, so much. I really don't like heat as far as exercising, but that's interesting that you're talking, that we're talking about electrolytes, because I'm sure that's what's in that packet.
I have a friend who they used a honey packet that does that. It's like a honey infused thing, and it's just like it's almost like a ketchup packet, and they just take it right in. Yeah, and they keep it in a little pouch on their belt while they run around.
I used to know ultra marathon cyclists, and that's what they did. I've heard of that before. Yes, that part I have actually heard of. Ultra marathon cyclists would carry a little package of honey with them in their back, and that's what they.
I would caution, though, that most of us with PAD didn't get where we are because we're ultra marathon runners. So, like, they're more for extreme, like Kevin Morgan, maybe, DJ, who's a mountain climber. But most of us probably get plenty of salt in our diet.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm trying to learn more about this community, is how much of it is a genetic component.
Well, I think a lot of it is. I think a lot of it has, genetic factors that we haven't even discovered that, get triggered, right, by some environmental factors. It could be free radicals or whatever the environment that turned it on. For me, with my autoimmunity, it was like the COVID, whatever genetic light needed to switch, and it turned on, and suddenly my autoimmune system, which I had the autoimmune, there was that gene in there somewhere, but you just need, what is that factor that is going to flip the switch for you, right? And so with different people, it's a different switch that can be flipped. But it's just like, with smoking, there has to be some sort of switch that is flipped for those people in which the smoking ends up causing atherosclerosis and killing them early and leading to COPD and leading to lung cancer and blah, blah, blah. But yet we all know someone that smokes at 90 something years old. And even George Burns, he drank, he smoked, he did all that. And he was very public about it. And he was okay. But yet other people did the same thing. And
Johnny Carson.
And so there has to be some sort of gene.
Well,
Johnny Carson, yeah.
Here's a thought. I know in my addiction part, I people who are crack use crack. Some people will tell you I used it or coke. I used it and I hated it from the very moment and never did it again. And then you'll hear some people say I used it one time and it was game on. So it's like what Kim's saying. Is there a switch in some people that it lights that switch off? Because I do know people that will say I used crack one time and it was game on, and it was like my world changed. And I know people that say I used it one time and I hated it and never used it again. So it's like, is there a switch? Is there a study? Do you know of a study where?
Isn't that addictive personality? Isn't that what that is?
Well, hold on. I know that there's a certain percentage of the populace, when they drink alcohol, their dopamine spikes.
Yes.
And that doesn't affect everybody, right? So imagine your very first time drinking alcohol, you're the life of the party. Okay. And alcohol has a horrible track record. Okay. Like, the number one thing that alcohol does is when I say it lowers inhibitions, that's one way of putting it. But a better way of understanding it is it makes you care less about what happens next. And so then you have another drink, and now you care even less about what happens next. You couple that with somebody whose dopamine spikes because they're on alcohol, And now you have those people that can lead an entire party into keg stands, drinking cheers, naked conga lines, the whole kit and caboodle. And it happened because one guy is on cloud nine and he happens to have a huge amount of charisma, you know?
And then there's the type of person, and I have a loved one like this, who is an alcoholic, could go weeks, months without drinking. But once they started, they drank until they were in oblivion. Maybe that's because of the dopamine.
Well, that's exactly it, right? So, they talk about what your relationship with alcohol should be, right? I want to say that the last time that they measured binge drinking in America, it was 3 drinks a night. If you have 3 drinks a night, you're binge drinking. Okay. And so if they're saying that, that makes you wonder about how much people were drinking in the past and what that was like. How like when I go out and I have a few drinks, I'll limit myself as best I can to 3 martinis and that's it. And I don't even do that much, because one of the things about eating once a day is the hangovers are days long. So if I go over that limit of drinking, it becomes a day and a half to recover.
How long have you been doing that, Josh?
Which part?
The not the drinking and having day long hangovers. Intermittent fasting.
I'm probably at it was a couple years before the pandemic, which screws all of my math up. So I guess like almost 7 years now.
And did you find that you dropped weight?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that's before the pandemic, you said?
Yeah. It was before the pandemic.
Okay. Yeah.
That math is 2020. I think that's easy math if you. But good for you. Really good for you. And I find I have so much more energy, and I don't know that I have more energy, but I'm not having slumps.
Well, that's what it feels like, right? It feels like a baseline of energy.
Right.
Right. And because you like to work out in the morning, that's another life hack, right? If you're having trouble with your sleep schedule, one of the best things that you can do for yourself is to go outside for, 8 to 12 minutes while the sun is coming up. Right. And so in your brain says, oh, this is morning. Right. And so now that sleep clock starts versus not going outside till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then your brain's like, oh, well, we can be awake now for 15 hours. And then you're wondering why you're staring at your phone at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
I'm not. You said that a minute. I know a gentleman who drinks those little red bottles.
Red Bull.
The 5-hour energies.
That 5-hour energy. He's up to like 5 or 6 a day of those things now, and it's like, dude, you need to stop. It's like,
I bet you every
crazy.
now and then when he goes to pee, it's green because of the different stuff that they put in there.
But it's crazy to think about. He does 5 or 6 of those a day. It's like, wow.
That little juice bottle thing is pretty much the same thing that they put in like Monster energy drink without the caffeine.
I've never had a Monster Energy.
Nobody should drink those things. Those things are poison.
Never had one.
Douglas, you said a few weeks ago, or I forget how long ago, but a while ago, you were going for a sleep study, or that you had to, I think you were doing it at home. Did you have that?
So, well, this week has been kind of crazy with the test and the results. So I'm on the water pill.
What test? The sleep study?
I got a call the other day, and it was from the doctor, and they think I'm retaining water around my heart. So I'm taking these water pills. And then I absolutely failed my sleep test. She said your numbers were all over the place. So now I'm going to be honest. My first thought was, oh, here comes the CPAC. Now I'm going to end up wearing that big ass mask that my mom had to wear. And it's like, absolutely not. And she said, slow down, Mr. Salisbury, slow down. They have all kinds now. But so they're going to set me up to have a CPAP now because I failed the sleep study test and my numbers were all over the place.
Don't look at it, Douglas, as though you failed it. I told you one time on one of our Zooms, my mask is like my best friend. I can't wait to climb into bed and put that on. I sleep so good. Well, I also am very active during the day. You know, the more active you are, like after you do your 5K, don't you sleep good?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, better than average. But I love my CPAP.
Well, I have another question for you, Doug. When you're inspired and you're doing a bunch of art, does that also wipe you out at the end of the day?
Now, I'm different. I am, my inspiration hits me usually later in the evening and at night. My brain just, for some reason at night, that's when maybe it's just me, but I've always been that way. The mornings, I get going and I work all day, but the night times are always the best for me to start drawing and create new things for some reason.
No. I'm the same way. When I'm working on software, a big part of my day is being reactive to clientele. Okay. So if I'm in a reactive state, what I need to be is prepared to answer questions, pivot to whatever trouble my clients are having. But if I'm going to develop a solution, I push all of that off until the evening. Right. And so I have dinner, I relax a little bit, and then I am energized to do literally whatever I have to create or dream up or push forward.
I see
Right?
that because during the day I'm cutting my wood, I'm sanding it, I'm pulling out different pieces, I'm cutting some more wood and doing all that. And usually in the evenings when I settle down and I pull it in here into my trailer and I put it up there and all right, this is what they want, but what do you think? And then it really goes.
Yeah, right. So the question becomes, while those wheels are turning, okay, so you have creative wheels turning, and then you're going to couple that with any other anxiety that you have driven, right? If I have a solution that I owe to my client, my brain is like, all right, well, we can't just sit there and not do anything about this. We got to do something. And so I can't imagine that same anxiety thinking about myself, right? Like, I'm not part of the PAD community. I'm not part of the aortic hope community. I'm a solution developer. And so I think very often about what that anxiety is like. And then I see people that adopt mindfulness and how they can learn how to channel that anxiety into a recognized emotion and then put that emotion to bed.
Right. And so I think I can. So when she called, she said, your heart monitor is all over the place. It beeped for us. So my first thought was, holy smoke, somebody's actually paying attention to my heart monitor now. And then when she made the comment, well, we think you're holding water around your heart. So yeah, my brain actually started going, oh crap, just something else to deal with. But I'm lucky in a sense, I can say this, 39 years of recovery has helped me. Those moments don't last. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me 100%.
Yeah. So 39 years of working my recovery program. I called a friend. The first thing I did was call a friend. I got out of myself. The second thing I did that night was I pulled 4 or 5 pieces of wood in here. I said, I'm going to turn the TV off. I turned the radio up as loud as I could, and I just started drawing. So I got out of myself and tried to stay out of that thinking, that negative thinking. Now, I still have it, but it's not as bad as if I didn't have all these, I didn't have the tools that I use today to stay clean and sober, if that makes sense to anybody.
I mean, there's something to be said about being a veteran at it,
One thing I learned was that because I have a coach, I worry about everything. I worry about everything all the time. And I worry about not only me, I worry about everybody else. Everyone else's problems keep me awake at night as well. But one of the things that my coach had taught me a long time ago, which I try to use as much as I can, which is once you have that negative thought, you need to say, okay, I see you, negative thought. And does it serve me to have this, to think it? And it's always going to be, no, it doesn't serve you. Does it add value? No, it doesn't add value. Does having this negative thought create the change you want to see? No. Does it feel good to think that negative thought? No. Now, after you answer no to all those questions, do you still want to think that negative thought? No. But is it okay to think that negative thought because it just sometimes is what it is? Yes. But only if you know in your heart of hearts you prefer to not think that negative thought because you know it doesn't make you feel better. You prefer to think a thought that feels better. But are you ready to think that thought that feels better? The answer is no, that's okay. But you know what? You get to a place where at least you know that you prefer to think a better thought, so that when you are ready to think that better thought, what's going to make you think that better thought? Well, it's actually turning off the TV, turning up the radio, it's grabbing a piece of wood. It's that's going to make me feel better in that moment versus thinking that negative thought. But is it okay to think that negative thought? Yeah. But as long as you know it's not going to make you feel better, and as long as you know what will make you feel better, which is channeling your energy elsewhere.
You
and you play that
absolutely
game with
nailed
yourself.
that on the head. You nailed that on the head right there. I realize I'm a human being. I'm going to have I'm still a human being. It's okay to have a bad thought. It's what I do with it that makes the difference. Absolutely. If I stood there, I had a negative thought and I stood there and I dwelled on it all day long. By the time 9 o'clock gets here, I'm going to be up at 5 o'clock because I'm still awake thinking about that crap.
Yeah. And does it change anything? And that's what I keep having to tell myself or ask myself, is thinking this thought going to change anything? We all want to feel good. And if it doesn't make you feel good, then you know what? And it doesn't add value and it doesn't change anything to think about it, then you know what? It's time to think about a feeling thought. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. Find a way that you can think about it differently or distract yourself, think about something else. And I love that you know that you can't change that thought. So you know what? When you're ready to just feel better, you know you've already developed that process by which you can find a way to feel better, right? Which is turning off the TV, turning off the radio, grabbing your wood, doing your drawing, things like that. And everyone should start thinking about one thing that does make you feel better when you're ready to feel better. And for me, for a long time, and I actually ended up creating an addiction to them, which is the latte. Is I always knew that having an almond milk vanilla latte would make me feel better. And so when I would go through those things and things I feel, I would go,
She's DJing for you again, Doug.
I know she's.
Yeah, if you can hear us, pizza always made me feel better. Not in the long run, but momentarily.
She's going to have to rejoin us. She just dropped the call.
And you know what she was saying also, I think I was thinking at the same time, I was thinking, today I can worry about something and still function because it's okay for me to worry about something, but I can still keep going forward. I can still keep moving forward. I have to be able to, the worst thing I can do is not recognize that negative thought. The moment I don't recognize that negative thought, then it's going to linger and it's going to destroy everything else. Well, it'll weep into everything else. The moment I acknowledge that negative thought and that feeling, I understand today, of course, 39 years of recovery has taught me I can still feel bad, but still keep moving forward. It's okay.
Yeah. When I think about negative thought, this is an interesting thing for me. Somebody, I can't remember who I was talking to, was bringing up balance, right? And they were explaining how some people that when they get depressed, it's because all they're doing is sinking into those negative thoughts. And he was trying to explain what positive affirmation is and what balance really can do to the psyche. And he was like, but imagine, if you're dwelling on negative thoughts, but never do you just say to yourself, I'm awesome. If you never think that, even just the once, you're at a huge negative balance equation, right? And so, some people aren't, they're just not good at thinking things like today's a good day, it's beautiful outside, or anything positive. They just get kind of sunk into that black hole of negativity. And I played sports as a child, so you have to be able to you kind of learn how to lose, right? I'm an avid video game player. You have to cope with failure in order to conquer any video game. And so some people never had that early life lesson of how to take a loss, how to take a setback, how to recuperate, how to pivot, all of those things. And I was like, because when you're going to work for yourself, I mean, look at Kim. You guys don't want, Kim is her confidence. It takes these big, huge swings all of the time, right? She's on TV. She's going to, like, no matter who you are, no matter how pretty you are, there are going to be haters in your DMs talking trash. And she's a pro. She probably by now has an easy time of going swipe, swipe, swipe.
Yeah, that's funny. I don't think so.
Wrong.
I that is so wrong. Douglas knows that, and I think Douglas knows that firsthand because everything affects me. Everything affects me. I take everything personally because I just care so much.
I met you 5 years ago, and I could promise you this, Kim. This is from me to you. I promise you this. When I met you 5 years ago to where you are today, you are changing in a sense. You are learning. You are progressing in that sense. You're not as bad as you think you are.
We're all our worst critic.
Because I'm trying to take my own advice. But part of that, there is you can care so much, but there is a point at which that care can actually turn into crisis, right? And it can literally, lead you on a downward spiral versus being used to your benefit. So the key is to be able to take, those moments of adversity and be able and just taking them with a grain of salt and turning them into something that you can use to continue the momentum forward. And that does take a lot. It is a lot of learning over the course of quite a few years. I've had a really emotional week where I was actually going to call you, Douglas on this, but I had a situation in the UK that I know that I don't agree with. And there was a doctor that literally brushed me off. And it was in the most horrible way possible because I have a patient that is put on palliative care. And any doctor here in the US would have at least attempted to open up the vessel just to give that patient just a little bit more flow. They would have, done it without, this patient was not a candidate for anesthesia. Put him under twilight was not really the best idea because of serious comorbidities. Liver cirrhosis and advanced ESRD, advanced end stage, kidney disease, renal failure, renal disease. And the team actually felt like the risk to doing it would outweigh the benefits because, he's already dying. So let's just, if that's not going to kill him, the necrosis from the necrotic wound on his foot will. So why fix his foot when he's going to die anyway? And so this patient now has to watch, and the daughter has to watch the gangrene creep up the leg. And so likely he's not going to die of, kidney failure or his cirrhosis of the liver. He's going to die because earlier, maybe even, maybe just weeks earlier, because of probably an infection, systemic infection due to that gangrene, right? And it creeping up the leg. And here, I've never had a doctor turn down any patient. Well, I have had them, but then I can always find a doctor who will do it. The problem is in the UK, I don't really have options. They all have their teams that get together and they have the discussion about the patient without considering the quality of life of that patient. So like, well, his life, we could spend the money and the time elsewhere. He's going to die anyway. So let's not at least make him comfortable in the meantime. And oh, by the way, well, he is being made comfortable. When I said to her, hey, I'm here to support, I better support. They don't need support. They need nothing.
So if that had been his daughter, if that had been
and
his
this doctor
son,
was like, right. And that's
that
what's
is,
frustrating to me is I'm so frustrated. I said, well, hey, why don't you come on our show? Conversation about what are the rules in the UK and how can we navigate the system? And the doctor was like, no, I don't have time for it. I don't have time for it. I don't have time to educate my patients. My other colleagues could do it. As if the Global PAD Association, what we're doing doesn't matter, because I have a feeling this doctor did not like me questioning it did not like me questioning what happened. And I wasn't trying to question what they were doing or decided to do or not do was not right. I just want to understand why they're making the decision that they are so that we can better educate our patients and the public. But they don't feel like there's a need. Like, education is not good. These patients left in the dark is okay.
If that had been his son, his daughter, his mom is dead, and he could have given them 6 more months with them, I promise you, he would have done that, wouldn't he?
Right. But this is a no-name patient, just another patient. And that's why it's so interesting when you talk to, like, for example, Dr. Phillips, it was prior to doing the Heart of Innovation and meeting all of you. And I think if Marcia's still here, she knows this firsthand, because I think she kicked off and was the catalyst with her kind of calling, Dr. Phillips to say, hey, you know what? You need to look at each patient as an individual, as a mom, a dad, a son, a daughter, a brother, a sister, right? We have feelings. Our quality of life really matters, and for each one of us is different.
In the beginning, he was just going to work, doing his job, and going home.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I understand, but he had no. Okay, Josh. I don't think he had the insight or the empathy that his patients were suffering 24 or on a roller coaster or merry-go-round 24 hours a day, and to say, move that patient. We can't get to them today after they've driven 4 hours to get there and, gotten up early in the morning and gotten off work, and her husband did. And he didn't, it was like there wasn't a connect, but he has changed.
Yep.
And how many times have you heard him say something like, I hadn't thought about that? Just a couple months ago, I heard him say that. I have not actually thought about that. And you could hear it in his voice when he said, y'all have taught me how to think about things. I never really thought about that part about the patient being, and he said,
well, I kind of called him on it that one day, but I didn't mean to be in a rude way. Kim, you know. Is she still there?
I'm totally with you. It was in it was in the nicest way possible. But it just was frustrating that, and I worry every single day about pissing some big time doctor off that will just deliberately ruin our reputation or try to bring us down. They don't want to be questioned simply because they don't like what we're doing, because we're fighting for patients, and they don't want patients to be fought for. They want to maintain a status quo. They don't want to be questioned. They don't want patients to stand up for themselves and advocate for themselves. And I have fear of that every day. And that has really plagued me this week. And it kept up at night, because I'm now concerned that here's this top doctor in Europe that everybody respects that literally blew me off. And I know that they can't tell me the specific details of a specific case, but they can, say, Kim, let's have a conversation just in general about how things work so that you better understand. We don't have to defend ourselves. We're not asking you to defend your decision. We're simply asking for an explanation so that we can better guide other patients in navigating the healthcare system. And then I can go back to this patient and go, I'm really sorry, but there really is nothing. Yes, maybe if you were in the US, they could do something, but here is the situation and what's going on and why palliative care is the best for your loved one. Yeah, it's painful to watch your loved one go through palliative care and having no one try. And when you think they're getting better, it's hard to say, no, you're going to take a turn for the worse and you're going to go downhill, even if you are treated. So it's really, why put you through another procedure? Kind of even like with my mom, we talked about it. Yeah, maybe she could have had a procedure that would have fixed her dissected aneurysm early on. It might have given her a few more months. But what would be that quality of life during those few months? She would be in and out of the hospital. She would be poked and prodded. She would be on tons more medications. What would that quality of life look like? And so maybe that decision that these doctors are making not to do anything and just to let them die naturally and let nature take its course with the leg and not opening it up, it might be preventing that person from going through ups and downs and ins and out of the hospital over the next even just couple weeks or next few months. That would create a very even lower quality of life.
That woman that you and I got involved with here locally in my area, that's a perfect example of it, and she did die. At some point, I think there's a matter of acceptance also. Where a patient is. She would have died even with intervention. I mean, she was in
a bad way.
Right.
And they were just trying everything. And so maybe it would have been better. I mean, you have some people that might say, you know what, I want you to at least try, but there are others that, like in my mom's case, that, maybe depending on the person, what is the quality of life?
Would it have made your week better or different if that doctor had done that? He'd have been on the phone and he said, all right, Miss Kim, let's talk about this. This is what we're thinking. This is the direction we're thinking. But instead you got, okay, see you later, and split.
Yep, I'm not interested in talking to you anymore. Your Global PAD Association is not worth my time, and I'm not even going to bother responding to you anymore. And it was like, I'm not trying to question you. I'm trying to understand. And we're not being invited, even accepted into the party for a patient that has reached out to us. The patient is saying that the team that is presented to me with the palliative care folks, they're just saying he's going to die, he's going to die, he's going to die. Don't worry about it. We're just going to give him medication and let him die. Like, that's not support. And that's what they're receiving. So we like to provide a little bit more if we understand what the decision-making process is and what the protocols are. We can say, unfortunately, this is the reality.
But can I ask
we don't
you a
agree
question?
with it, but we can help them better understand what's happening to them.
So what would be wrong? What would be absolutely wrong with every now and then looking at a doctor and going, what the hell are you thinking?
Oh, they don't like it. Most of them don't like it. You have to be very, very careful. And we're very respectful that, you know what, not one of us, we're very careful. We have deliberately gone in the opposite direction, that we don't have doctors on our team. We don't have clinicians on our team, right? We are not here to give medical advice. We are not here to replace the doctor. We respect the doctor, but we also respect the fact that there are different philosophies, different tools, different techniques, and different approaches to caring for PAD and people with different presentations of PAD. But we're also here on the front lines when doctors aren't. As Dr. Phillips found out, there is so much more to these patients beyond the 9 to 5 clinic. that need to be considered and should be considered. And that's, I think, where we come in to help these doctors understand that these are human beings. These are your brothers, your sisters, your moms, your pops, you know, your daughters, your aunts, your uncles, your friends, your neighbors, etc. And they're human. They have feelings. And we need to consider those. When
So
we're
the
treating.
doctor's in his warm, comfortable bed, all nice and cozy, dead ass asleep. When you have somebody in a bed with their foot laying off the bed, their foot up in the air, their foot over here, they're walking this, and it's 2:30 in the morning, and they're crying because they can't sleep because the big toe hurts or whatever. You know, how do you get doctors to understand that? And I think one lady in our group said one time, well, let me just tie your leg up in like that. Let me tie your leg up and you go on about your life and see how that works for you.
Yeah. I think that person was Kim.
Did you see Josh's comment in the chat?
Yep, I'm not going to repeat that out loud.
What? I didn't. Now I got to go to chat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's certain to offend a few people.
that one might. Yeah, it might. But how many doctors have you run across that probably needed? Well, never mind. All right, never mind.
No, but my point is that, you know, I have had moments where I have not agreed with a doctor, but I respect them so much more because they've taken the time to help me to understand their thinking, where they're coming from, their philosophy. And I can say, well, you know what? That is your way of doing things. That is your philosophy. And there is truth to it. There is, you know, room for that. Fantastic. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to think it's the best approach. I might then want to seek a different doctor with a different philosophy. But at least I understand with that doctor, and I believe that every single doctor has a purpose and a patient. Every doctor has the right patient for them, but not every patient is the right patient for every doctor. Not every doctor is the right doctor for every patient. And I'm glad that, you know, for the most part, many of us, at least here in the US, do have choices. It gets harder when you are in an HMO system or in a community care system where they restrict your choices and require referrals from your GP for every single specialist you see. But the problem with that is that the GPs are not always abreast of the fact that different doctors, different approaches, different tools, different techniques. And I ran into that in a California HMO just in the past week, where the vascular surgeon said, I'm sorry, we don't treat below the knee and into the foot. The vessels are too small, so we're probably going to have to amputate your leg below the knee. I called up one of the doctors who was in that same HMO system, but in a different hospital. And the problem with that HMO was that things are considered out of network if you go to another hospital, even if it's under the same name, under the same HMO. If you go to it, there's no reason, they don't think there's any reason to go to a different hospital or to go to a different doctor within the system because they're all considered equal. And when you get referred to a specific doctor, like a vascular surgeon, well, that vascular surgeon can make the best decisions for you, even if there might be a different doctor within the system that might offer something different. That doctor, that original doctor, has to agree with it, and that becomes a problem. So you have to go back to the GP and play the game. And you have to say to the GP, hey, that vascular surgeon said that they can't do it, and to get a second opinion, even if that vascular surgeon said, you need to get a second opinion from someone on my own team, right? You imagine they have the same philosophy, so they're going to just agree with them. No, you need a different doctor in a different practice in a different hospital that might have a different philosophy. So I was able to call this other doctor, an interventional radiologist, who's in another hospital within the same HMO system. And I was like, okay, help me work this system. You got to help me here. Tell me what to do. And so he told me you needed to get back to the GP and to get that GP to make the referral. Well, that GP refused the referral. And so the daughter calls me crying and says, oh my gosh, my dad's going to lose his leg. They said to go straight to emergency, and guess who's on call? The original vascular surgeon that wants to amputate. So I said, put your dad in the car and you get back up there. And I want you to say, I need to talk to the GP again, and just let yourself cry in front of them. You're going to get back there. So they went back there, they got into the room, and I said, okay, I want you to keep me in your ear. And she had her earbuds. I always say when you go to these appointments, just have your earbuds in so they can't see you're on the phone. And then you just repeat after me. And she went in there and she repeated that, hey, the doctor said, I understand I have to go to the emergency. I understand time is tissue with the toe. If I go to this vascular surgeon, they're going to cut off the leg. I'm not even going to try and treat me, okay? If this was your, if I go to that hospital, you don't refer me to this other hospital with this other doctor, the amputation is going to be on your shoulders. And the doctor was like, no, it's not. How dare you say that? How dare you make that sort of accusation? And I repeated in her ear and I said, you need to now say, what if this was your dad, your brother? Wouldn't you want the best chance? If there was potentially another doctor that might have a different skill set in a different facility, wouldn't you want your dad or your brother to go and have the best possible chance of keeping that leg? And the doctor went silent and said, I'll be right back. She came back and had issued the referral to the doctor we wanted. So I called back the other doctor and I said, okay, what do we do? Who is on call in the emergency room from your team? And they went and found out. And they found out it was actually someone in interventional radiology that actually has experience with PAD. And because in the emergency rooms, they err on the side of going directly to the vascular surgeon. If you get that vascular surgeon, then you're not going to get interventional radiology. So what we needed to do was to then, once the patient got to the emergency room and went inside and talked to the doctor, she needed to say, we need to see interventional radiology. The vascular surgeon had said there's nothing they could do. They can't treat small vessels and told us to get a second opinion. We just got the referral to an interventional radiologist here, and we want to stay in the same department. So please call the interventional radiologist on duty that's on call. And they did. And we were able to get the interventional radiologist to go in and open up the arteries, and he only lost a toe. He didn't lose his leg.
But with that other doctor, do you think it was the ego? What do you think it was that stopped him or her from saying, okay, get that second opinion? Because you talk about this. How do we get doctors to recognize I have this set of skills, this doctor has this set of skills, and this doctor has this set of skills? What is wrong with sending that patient that you may not be able to do that particular thing, but this one can? Is it ego? Is it pride? What causes doctors to say, nope, I'm the only one. I'm God. That's it.
That is a really good question. And I think for every one of them, it's different. But what I've learned, especially in the systems, is I think that everyone means well. I think the doctors mean well. And I think what ends up happening is that when a patient is referred to them, what they're taught in medical school is if X, then Y. So they look into their armamentarium and look at what options they have to treat them. Even if there are options elsewhere, they think that, hey, this is what's in my armamentarium. This patient came to me. This hospital trusts the patient with me. And I am going to treat them in the way I know how. It's not wrong because, let's say, for example, in your case, an axillary bifemoral bypass is still considered treatment for your situation. Was it the best and only treatment for you? No, but it was the only option that this doctor knew of and could offer you in his office. So some doctors may know of other options, but they may not agree with them because they're afraid of becoming irrelevant. They're afraid of losing their reputation, no longer being credible, no longer being the go-to, no longer being the top dog, no longer being able to have their big title. But, you know, there is a large contingency that we've learned of these doctors that simply just don't know what they don't know, especially in the smaller communities. I've done more to educate these doctors on what's possible than even what they've learned in their continuing medical education courses.
So you need to remember that. That may be one doctor in the UK, but look at how many lives and limbs you and the organization have actually saved in the past couple of years. I know a lady in California you and I dealt with. Same thing. They were going to amputate her, and a day later you put her with another doctor, and they did what? Save her leg. So you just got to remember, one at a time. You're changing one at a time, and you are making a difference.
Yeah, I just need to do a better job of tracking everything, because the only thing that actually makes difference for these is evidence. So, you know, one of these days I'm going to have to put in the group and say, I need you to fill out this survey. If I helped you at all, you need to share how I helped you and what was told to you before you came to us, and what we did to change the course of your life in your trajectory. And we need to do a better job of that. We just need to probably put it out there and just say, if I do anything, if our team does anything to help you, please fill out this survey so that we can end up tracking it, because I'm terrible at documentation. I, want to spend more of my time. It just takes away from me spending more of my time helping everybody, having to do all this documentation. And also what I find is that, do you want to sit there for half an hour and have me ask you a million questions? And I guess we could do a follow-up later, but gosh, it's so much to have to document all of this.
But as a patient, I can say, back when I started with you, I would have sat 30 minutes and had you ask me all kinds of questions, because it meant somebody was paying attention to me and listening to me. And I hear that a lot in the group also, is that it's just like in recovery. Sometimes we just need somebody to listen to us and acknowledge what we're going through and ask those questions.
Yeah. That's
and
true.
Not just spend 4 minutes on the phone with us and hang up. Okay. How old are you? How long you been feeling this way? See you later. And like, hello, did I miss something? So asking me those things. What about you feel at night? Do you do this? Do you do? Yeah. I guarantee you there's half the people in this room or in our group, more than half, would say, ask me those questions, because then they feel like somebody's listening.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I hope a lot of people are listening. Hopefully they're loving what we're talking about. I think we've gone and covered everything, but maybe the kitchen sink's been included in this conversation. But I think it's been really powerful. We've gone from talking about diabetes and the American Diabetes Association scientific meetings and what is being discussed there, which was really interesting. Clear through talking about how the Global PAD Association could do a better job documenting, the change that we're creating and the impact that we're having, so that we can create the evidence we need in order to establish greater credibility and with that, a grander voice to advocate for the patients.
Do you think that needs to be like 50 questions, or can it be something simple also?
Well, I think it starts with our Lifesaver hotline, questionnaire that we have. The problem I have even with the questionnaire is it becomes so daunting to fill out everything. I always want to jump straight to the solution, which is, do they need a doctor? Do they need this? Do they need that? But,
well, the phone rang at 1:30 last night, but it sounded like they were in a bar and then they hung up. So
yeah, we get calls at all hours from so many different people. So, but I appreciate everyone being here. It's been really a fun conversation. And Thomas, I see that you're here, and I'm so glad to hear that you've enjoyed it as well. And I thank Joshua for participating and Marcia for participating. And I think Bobby's there
walking
for participating. And Bobby is walking. Nice job, Bobby. It's nice to have the accountability, even if you just join us to walk in. You should join us every Monday. We have Moving with Marcia every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern. Gives you an opportunity to just join us and have the accountability for walking, moving, improving circulation, improving your mindset, which is really great. Next week, we're going to be starting something really exciting. If you might recall, we announced a couple of months ago that a patient of ours who is also a nurse practitioner, Deidre Arms, she is going to be launching a new Wellness Wednesday series where she is going to be talking about natural ways to take your health into your own hands. And she is going to talk about beyond medicine, what you can do. For example, I think this Wednesday, we're going to talk about all the medications that you're on to improve your circulation and all of the ways in which those medications can actually lead to vitamin deficiencies in your body and further complications. And she's going to talk about ways in which you can improve those vitamin deficiencies when you're on certain medications, such as antiplatelets, anticoagulants, and statins. So that's going to be a very interesting conversation.
What time is that on Wednesday?
It is going to be at 12:30 Eastern Time, 9:30 Pacific, 11:30 Central Time, 10:30 Mountain Time. Cool. And I'm really excited about that. And so the more people that come to the table and ask questions, that would be great. On Tuesday, we're doing an incredible What's Up Doc with Fadi Saab. And we're going to be having the tough conversation with him about some of the accusations against, he and his partner, and how they're continuing to persevere and fight for life and limb. And we're going to hopefully have, more than a dozen patients. We've got a rally around him who are going to be sharing their stories with him of how they've helped him. And even Douglas showing up to say, hey, even though you're not my doctor, you've been here, you've inspired me. You've encouraged me to not settle for less than what I deserve or what's possible out there. You have inspired me to fight for my legs and fight for what's right and fight for advanced care. And so we want everyone to show up and be able to share with him. Also, we're going to have a Q&A time where we'll be able to ask him questions about our own situations that we can't get answered because we're in between time, between appointments with our own doctors. So that should be interesting. We're also going to be starting, and I don't know, Joshua, if Joshua has any update from Kevin Morgan. I've been away, so I haven't really checked email as much, but I think he was developing or devising a plan to do training Thursdays, training for aging Thursdays with us. Okay, he hasn't reached out to you. I'll get back to him as I jump into this week and see if we can start our training for aging Thursdays with Kevin Morgan, where he can take excerpts from his book, answer questions, and just have the conversation about, you know, taking your health into your own hands and how to exercise more effectively based on what works for him, and how he's been able to run marathons and participate in Ironman competitions, even with PAD, even with an aortic dissection that did. I return to actually Bobby right now. Bobby, I see you're out there walking. I'm so excited to see you're out there walking. This is such a wonderful sight to see. I am so proud of you. I know it's really hard to get motivated, and especially in the situation you're in right now, where you have been told there's no options. You're in excruciating pain. You have rest pain that wakes you up at night, and you're waiting to get in to see a second opinion that we've gotten for you. But you're out there walking, you're pushing through that pain, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, honey. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay. God bless all of you. I really appreciate you being there. And on one final note, we all have ripples in our life, you know, especially with this disease or whatever. But I find to a large degree, my problems I create from living in the past and living in the future. And every time I bring it home to the present moment, things get so much better. And that's a real ace in the hole. That information's been around for thousands of years. And it's like you said, at this present moment, there's really nothing more that I can be doing for myself than listening to you good folks and walking. And
wow.
So that's a really powerful tool for me. Eckhart Tolle, he is the guru. He wrote The Power of Now back in the 80s. And it's just layman's term on how we can practice to be present. And the walking meditation is also a powerful tool. And to what we used to say in the program is you take a lemon and you make lemonade. And that's kind of what it is with all the tribulation that I've always had and we will continue to have in my life, have really turned out to be my greatest blessings, because it seems like the more strife and more tribulation that I'm going through in my life, the more I focus on a spiritual solution. And at this age of the game, I'm 69 years old now. I'm getting ready to meet my maker. I know that. And that is really the most important thing in my life. Is pain has always been a touchstone to personal growth for me. And it's the same way with this darn disease right now. You know, I have to flip the script and tell myself, you know, the benefits. I haven't had a cigarette in over almost 3 years, and this crazy disease is actually adding years to my life, because they told me I'd die from the nicotine. I didn't care about that, but I did care about living without a limb, because there was something that just that I couldn't bear to do. So again, I'm kind of rambling a little bit because I'm just getting over this COVID. My mind isn't all that straight right now. But
yeah, but people don't even realize that you are just recovering from COVID as well, and that's been really challenging for you. And you're still out there and you're pushing yourself, and it takes so much motivation. But I'm curious, and I know kind of the answer to this, but you know, hearing you, you know, speak, you know, philosophically and stating the cliche things that we know and we've heard over and over again that, you know, we know make us feel better. But yet we end up in depression. We end up not being motivated, you know, despite knowing all of the power of now and this, that, and the power of being present and not worrying about the past, not worrying about the future. And we know what we should be doing. But how much has it helped you, even in this moment, to be a part of a support organization and being able to state it, being able to repeat it, hear yourself say it?
It's definitely one of the most critical things in my life. Is that nothing heals us more than love and compassion, and I can't speak for anybody else. I can't do life left to my own devices. You know, I need that support group on a daily basis, you know, and right now it's with the pad, it's there's most programs. I wouldn't be alive without them. So I mean, it's so darn important, you know, to humble ourselves. And by nature, I'll isolate. I've always been a lone wolf, but I have to do things that I'm not comfortable doing. And
but you know, you're making a ripple in the pond, right?
That's just it. You know what I'm saying? And lift my, you know, it's the old thing. Another 12-step program is will not regret the past or wish to shut the door on it, because our experience can help others. And like right now for me, especially at my age and what I got going on, that's the most important thing I could be doing in my life right now, is helping other people. You know, and that's where the rubber meets the road, and that gives me a better feeling than any of it.
Well, that's the part why you met this group and why you're here, and you being here and us watching you walk gives us inspiration, hope, courage, and strength. That's the whole point.
That's just it, brother. So bless all you guys, and I hope to be staying in a better touch with you. Thank you.
Yeah, and on that note, I think it's a good spot to end, and I look forward to seeing everyone on Monday. I appreciate you all, and Douglas, as always, thank you so much for being our chief warrior. We appreciate you, and Josh for being here on a Saturday and supporting us, volunteering your time as well. So thank you everyone for joining us, and I'll let Josh go ahead and end the live stream if he has host potential there.